If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 121. After a series of examinations by the doctor, he couldn't help but sigh in amazement. He actually recovered just like that? How is this possible? The doctor couldn't figure it out at all. Could it be that the doctor's treatment worked? Maybe Lee was already on the mend, and today he just fully recovered. Tenten tried to create a smokescreen. That shouldn't be the case. I've been practicing medicine for many years, I know exactly what kinds of injuries can be treated, and to what extent. This outcome is impossible, the doctor shook his head decisively. He knew his own medical skills. If he were that good, he would have surpassed Tsunade long ago. Natsuki chimed in, maybe it was Guy-sensei's beef that worked? Perhaps beef helped Lee's body recover? Maybe Lee has a special constitution where eating beef allows him to recover, or maybe the beef Guy-sensei gave today was special beef like from the fourth great sacred land sage beef or something. The more he talked, the more ridiculous it sounded. Tenten and the doctor both couldn't help but roll their eyes. Who would believe that nonsense? Really? Lee believed it. Guy-sensei. You're so good to me. You even went to the fourth great sacred land to get sage beef for me. I'll never forget this kindness for the rest of my life. Tenten couldn't hold back her teasing anymore. What sage beef? Might as well say it's Guy-sensei's love that worked. Guy and Lee both froze, then their eyes welled up with tears again. Ooh. So it was the love between master and student that moved the Sage of Six Paths. The sage bestowed his blessings upon Lee/me, allowing us to recover. I'm so touched. This is what youth is all about. The two embraced again. The background, well, let's not even go there. Everyone else present felt so awkward they wanted to curl their toes into the ground. They had no idea what to say. After a while, the two Kappa-like men finally stopped being so weird, though they were still full of passion. Especially after the doctor approved Lee's discharge, Lee was so excited he was practically over the moon. Guy-sensei. Please give me extra training. I want to make up for all the training I've missed these past few days. Oh. Lee, what a noble spirit. Then let me design a training regimen for you. But training is tough, you know, can you endure it? Guy-sensei, I will definitely endure until the end. Yosh. Then let's begin. Shadow Mat. Tenten stepped in front of the two Kappa-like men, her eyes blazing with a fury that brooked no argument. Lee, before that, you have to listen to my complaints. You were way too reckless in this exam. Your dream is important, but isn't your body important too? If your body breaks down, what dreams will you have left? Do you know how worried we were? Do you know how sad and pained Guy-sensei was? You need to reflect, kid. Her eyes welled up with tears as she spoke. She really had been worried. Even though she knew the senzu bean could heal Lee, the worry hadn't lessened one bit. She knew full well how reckless Lee was. No matter how many times he was healed, he would still act recklessly. But there weren't so many miracles in the world, and even a senzu bean might not be able to heal every time. She was really afraid of losing this teammate. Lee opened his mouth, but instead of his usual fiery spirit, he just muttered softly, Tenten, Guy-sensei, Natsuki. I'm sorry for worrying you all this time. Natsuki took the opportunity to speak. Since you know we worry about you, you should reflect properly. We all know you are trying to prove how hardworking and dedicated you are, but you also need to take care of your body. Your body is the foundation of everything. If your body breaks down, all your dreams will shatter. Don't be reckless again. Miracles don't happen every time, and you don't want to face despair again, do you? I'm sorry. Lee lowered his gaze. Back when he thought he might not be able to be a ninja anymore, he truly felt despair. His dreams, his everything, felt like they had been torn to shreds by reality. He even doubted the meaning of his life. Fortunately, a miracle had happened, and he would treasure it from now on. Especially now, knowing how much his friends and comrades had worried about him, he definitely wouldn't act recklessly again. He promised. At this moment, Guy quietly reached out and pulled Lee into a hug, tears in his eyes this time, not the wide stream tears from before, but gentle ones. He choked up softly, Lee, really, it's so good that you recovered. Guy-sensei. Lee also understood Guy's pain and joy at this moment, and the tears couldn't be stopped anymore. Thank you. Thank you, Guy-sensei. Thank you, Tenton. Thank you, Natsuki. Thank you, Neji. Thank you, everyone. I really. I promise you all, I won't be reckless again, I won't make you worry anymore. Neji had just arrived at the door and heard Lee's sobbing. For a moment, he too couldn't help but feel his eyes grow moist. Lee's recovery, of course, called for a celebration. But everyone was pretty busy, with many still preparing for the finals, and Lee didn't want to bother anyone. So in the end, it was just the 5 of them, Team Guy plus Natsuki, going to have a barbecue feast. Water. However, perhaps because Lee had just eaten the senzu bean, his stomach wasn't hungry, and he couldn't eat much. Guy thought it was because Lee had just recovered and shouldn't overeat, so he told everyone else to eat and just let Lee watch. Lee, Guy-sensei, I'm really grateful to you. After the barbecue, Tenton felt much more relaxed. She had been so worried about Lee, and now that he had recovered and she'd also taken the opportunity to scold him, she felt she didn't need to worry about him being reckless anymore. All in all, a series of good things had happened. Natsuki, thank you. She kissed Natsuki, genuinely grateful. That's how you thank me? Natsuki was dissatisfied. Then what do you want? Oh, it's nothing much, it's just that I haven't had a proper bath in days because I've been so busy training, and if someone could help scrub my back, that'd be great. You're such a perv. Always thinking about this kind of stuff. Humph. I'm not talking to you anymore. The two of them bickered all the way home. At the ninja tool shop, they just greeted the owner and then left, heading straight home. Tenton did know how to care for someone when Natsuki said he needed help scrubbing his back, though she said no with her mouth. She was very proactive in running the bath and preparing everything. Soon, the bathroom was filled with noise and laughter. The next day, Natsuki felt completely refreshed. He saw Tenton out the door, then re-entered the gravity training room, returning to his usual training routine. But while Natsuki wasn't paying attention, Konoha village was already stirring with dark currents beneath the surface. First, Gecko suddenly died under mysterious circumstances. Aoba Yamashiro, who had been secretly watching Kabuto Yakushi, found that Kabuto had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Even the Sand Village seemed to be acting a bit suspicious. The atmosphere in Konoha was turning strange and subtle, like a powder keg ready to explode at the slightest spark. And in the completely unnoticed root base, a guest had arrived. Orochimaru. Danzo squinted with one eye at Orochimaru, his gaze filled with something called ambition. Chapter 122. Time, like Hiruzen Sarutobi's life, was inching closer to its end. The daimyo of the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind arrived at Konoha village one after the other. The Kazekage of the Sand Village also came with his escort squad, and naturally, the final round of the Chunin exams was set to begin. After Natsuki and Tenton met up with everyone, they entered the tournament venue together. The venue was large, shaped like a funnel, with the battlefield in the center and spectators seating all around it, giving it a Roman Colosseum vibe. Natsuki, sharp-eyed, quickly located his soon-to-be father-in-law among the crowd. Well, actually, it was because he had left a Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, seal on him, so he could lock onto him quickly. Originally, Natsuki had wanted to convince his soon-to-be father-in-law to go on a business trip to the Land of Fire's capital during the finals. But the man had insisted that it was a rare opportunity to see his daughter and son-in-law shine before the whole village, and as a father, there was no way he wouldn't be there. With no choice, Natsuki left the Hiraishin no Jutsu seal as an insurance policy. In case of an emergency, he'd risk teleporting over to rescue him. Even if he got hurt, he could rely on a senzu bean. Staying inside the venue was actually safer. After all, the Konoha Crush plan started in the arena, but in reality, it was just Orochimaru and the Sandame fighting on the rooftops. Kakashi, Guy, and other Jonin would fight against the Sand and Sound Ninja, but there was rarely much collateral damage to civilians. On the contrary, outside the venue, the three-headed snake invasion and the rampaging Sand and Sound Ninja made it much more dangerous. Natsuki steadied his mind and began observing the arena. At this moment, the venue had already become an ocean of people, noisy and bustling. The audience was full of anticipation for the finals. Everyone was chatting away, as if they wished the Hokage would give them all microphones. On the high platform, the two chubby-faced daimyo had already taken their seats. The two daimyo seemed to be bantering or even mocking each other, perhaps even making bets. To them, the so-called Chunin exam finals was just a game. Whether the match was dangerous or not wasn't their concern because they themselves wouldn't be in danger. It really had that ironic feeling of nobles watching gladiators in the arena. On another high platform, the Sandaime Hokage and the 4th Kazekage had also taken their seats. Natsuki glanced at the Kazekage from a distance. At this moment, the Kazekage's face was covered, his appearance unclear, but if there were no surprises, it should indeed be Orochimaru. The Konoha crush plan had been meticulously prepared. As long as it wasn't exposed early, it would definitely proceed according to the original plan. Orochimaru only needed to wait for the right moment to complete his master-killing feat. Time's up. Let's begin, Hiruzen gave the order, and the referee stepped onto the field. Since Hayate had died in the previous arc, the main referee role now fell to Genma. Shiranui Genma, with a long senbon in his mouth, briefly explained the rules and then announced the start of the first match. Konohagakure's Aberame Shino, Tsunagakure's Kanker enter the arena. Shino nodded to his friends, then quickly made his way to the center of the field. Kanker hesitated, wondering if he should just forfeit. After all, they had a plan in motion later on. But since this was only the first match, it didn't feel right to give up so soon. Besides, since Temari hadn't made it to the finals, they didn't have to worry too much about battle strength. So, gritting his teeth, Kanker stepped onto the field and faced Shino. Battle. As the referee announced the start, Shino immediately released a large number of insects, swarming toward Kanker. Kanker didn't bother hiding his body and directly deployed his puppet, Crow. However, Shino's bugs covered the field like a tide, quickly engulfing the puppet and obscuring Kanker's line of sight. Feeling the insects gnawing on his chakra threads, Kanker hurriedly recalled the puppet to defend himself, but Shino's bugs kept advancing, leaving him flustered. Truth be told, Kanker wasn't weak, but defending against insects wasn't easy, especially in an open arena where there was nowhere to hide. He was clearly at a disadvantage. Just then, a familiar voice rang out. Idiot Kanker! He's above you! Kanker froze. It was Temari's voice. He looked up and was instantly dumbfounded. There really was a Shino hovering above him. But that wasn't right, there was still a Shino right in front of him. So which one was the clone? And when did the one above get there? Could it have been when the bugs were blocking his view? He didn't have time to think. Both Shino figures, under the cover of insects, closed in on him. Gritting his teeth, Kanker controlled his puppet to intercept the one above while he himself faced the one on the ground. But he didn't expect the Shino above to suddenly raise a leg and sweep out with a Renkyaku, storm leg, slicing off the puppet's head in an instant. At the same time, a Doton, Dori Dango, Earth Release, Earth Mausoleum Dumpling, smashed down from above. With enemies coming from both sides, Kanker instantly realized he had no chance. Even though he could still control the puppet without its head, he could tell that Shino was a formidable opponent. Besides, he didn't want to waste energy at this critical juncture. So as soon as Shino caught him, Kanker immediately shouted, "I give up. I surrender." Genma promptly called out, "That's it. Winner, Aberame Shino of Konohagakure." Shino froze for a moment, the expression under his sunglasses clearly showing displeasure. But since the referee had already declared the result, there was no need to continue. He retracted his insect clones and bugs, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked away coolly. Fortunately, the applause and cheers from the audience helped improve his mood. "Shino, you're amazing." Natsuki and Tenten both gave him a thumbs up. Thanks." Shino didn't hold back. After all, he had won with his own skills. Although the puppet master might have been holding back some strength, even if Kanker had gone all out, Shino still had the ability to win. Next was the second match, Kato Megami vs Yamanaka Ino. The Yamanaka clan was also a major clan in Konoha, so naturally, Ino drew a lot of attention, making her feel immense pressure. In contrast, Kato Megami was calm and composed. When the match started, she immediately used the Kuki-Yos no Jutsu, summoning technique, to summon Pakun and the other 8 ninja dogs. "Pakun! Go bite her!" The 8 ninja dogs lunged at Ino, who screamed and ran away. Meanwhile, Megami used Sudden, water release, to cut off Ino's escape, leaving her with no chance to fight back. Clearly, Megami understood the Yamanaka clan's secret techniques well. After all, the Ino-Shikacho formation only worked as a team. The Shinten-Shin no Jutsu, mind-body switch technique, was powerful, but it was useless alone. Moreover, Megumi had ninja dogs on her side. Even if Ino succeeded in using Shinton Shin no Jutsu, her body would be attacked by the ninja dogs, resulting in an inevitable loss. After some scrambling, Ino naturally lost, and Megumi won. Fortunately, in the third match, Shikamaru avenged Ino. Raine's Sanzanyu no Jutsu, Scattered Thousand Crows technique, combined with his Katon, fire release, jutsu, was indeed impressive. His taijutsu wasn't bad either. But Shikamaru's Kage main no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, was hard to guard against. Plus, Shikamaru was clever in his tactics, and a straightforward guy like Raine was easy prey. In the end, Shikamaru naturally claimed victory. Chapter 123. Shikamaru's performance was outstanding. His tactical use of the Kage main no Jutsu, shadow possession technique, was a sight to behold. The daimyo and the higher UPS were full of praise. Moreover, as the heir of the Nara clan, Shikamaru's status was highly regarded. It could be said that all the buffs were stacked onto Shikamaru, making his promotion to Chunin almost a certainty. Shikamaru, that was awesome. As soon as Shikamaru returned, Ino gave him a big thumbs up. After all, she'd been bullied terribly by Megumi just now, so seeing Shikamaru defeat Megumi's boyfriend was a satisfying revenge for her. Shikamaru couldn't help but roll his eyes, finding the topic boring and tiresome. Alright, let's focus on the matches. The real highlights are coming up. Indeed, the next 4th, 5th and 6th matches were all between skilled fighters, and the final match was a heavyweight bout that would definitely wow the crowd. Everyone was eagerly anticipating it. 4th match, Tenten from Konoha vs Dosuo from Otagakure. Tenten gave Natsuki a reassuring look and nodded at her friends before confidently stepping into the arena. In the spectator stands, a section erupted in cheers mainly from Tenten's shopkeeper father and the neighborhood folks. They were overjoyed to see Tenten about to shine on the grand stage. Tenten smiled and waved to the stands, sparking another round of cheers. Dosuo also sauntered onto the field, but unlike in the original timeline, he didn't provoke Gaara this time. Clearly, some events had changed. He was looking forward to a match with Tenten. After all, she had managed to hold off Orochimaru for a few moves before, which was no small feat. He considered it an honor to have a proper battle with her. As the referee announced the start, Dosuo immediately charged at Tenten. His right arm was fitted with a gauntlet riddled with holes. Those who had seen his previous fight with Koji knew that this gauntlet could emit ultrasonic attacks and even vibrational blasts, very dangerous. Tenten knew all this from the intel, so she wasn't about to engage in close combat. Besides, she remembered what Natsuki had told her, the finals weren't just about winning, they were about putting on a show for the daimyo and the higher UPS. To get a high score and have a shot at Chunin promotion, she needed to win in a flashy, exciting way. Showmanship? She could do that. She pulled out 2 scrolls, formed hand seals, and unfurled them. The scrolls shot into the air like twin dragons. Tenten leaped into the air, surrounded by the swirling scrolls, and began summoning a barrage of weapons. SSHRY. Twin rising dragons. Shoo. 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 In an instant, countless weapons rained down like a torrential storm upon Dosuo, forcing him to cover his head and scramble in all directions to avoid them. This SSHRY would be countered by someone like Temari, but against other opponents, it was formidable and dazzling to watch. The audience couldn't help but applaud. But Tenten wasn't done. She whipped out another scroll, tossing it into the air. More weapons poured down like a hailstorm from the unfurled scroll. Dosuo had no choice but to dodge frantically. His sonic attacks required close range, and with so many weapons raining down, even if he tried to shield himself with sound waves, it would only work briefly, draining his chakra. However, he was so focused on dodging that he didn't notice Tenten had already created a shadow clone. The clone disguised itself as a weapon, mixed in with the falling barrage, and landed right next to Dosuo. Suddenly, the clone reverted to human form and delivered a Tekken, Iron Fist, roundhouse kick directly to Dosuo's gauntlet, shattering it instantly. Without his gauntlet, Dosuo's sonic attacks were no longer a threat. The shadow clone immediately followed up with a flurry of Tekken strikes, while Tenten, still in the air, unleashed a Rankyaku, storm leg, slash. The sudden turn of events left Dosuo in shock. He barely managed to protect his vital areas, but Tenten's Rankyaku hit him hard, inflicting serious injuries. That's enough. Winner, Tenten from Konoha. As the referee announced the result, the entire stadium erupted in cheers. Tenton's dazzling performance had thoroughly entertained the audience, and her seamless flow of attacks, culminating in victory, left everyone thoroughly impressed. The shopkeeper was especially proud, shouting, "That's my daughter! That's my daughter!" People around him looked on enviously, wishing they had such an outstanding daughter themselves. Even the daimyo nodded in approval. After all, he didn't know much about ninja techniques, but flashy fights that looked cool were enough to earn a high score in his book. Tenten smiled, quickly sealing all the scattered weapons back into her scrolls so as not to hinder the next match. As for Dosu, he was just a self-important guy who thought he was clever. He believed he was strong enough to disregard Orochimaru, but in the end, he wasn't much at all. Hee. I won. Tenten returned, hands on her hips, grinning proudly. That was amazing, Tenten. Lee gave her a big thumbs up. Good job, Neji also offered a rare compliment. Their friends congratulated her, making Tenten puff up with pride, a happy young girl through and through. After all, her dream was to become a legendary kunoichi like Tsunade. Being able to shine so brightly in the finals was her first step toward that goal. Of course she was thrilled. Still, she quickly made her way to Natsuki, smiling brightly, waiting for his praise. My girlfriend is incredible. Great job. Natsuki picked her up and even lifted her high into the air. This made Tenten pout a little. She wasn't a kid anymore, after all, but hearing Natsuki's praise, she let him do as he pleased. Naruto, Ino, and Sakura watched from the side, filled with envy. Naruto envied Tenten for being able to compete, win, and receive everyone's recognition and praise, something he had always wanted. Unfortunately, he lost completely to Natsuki during the selection exam, so all he could do was envy. Ino and Sakura, on the other hand, envied Tenten for having such a strong, handsome boyfriend who spoiled her. They wished they had a boyfriend like that. Setting that aside, it was time for the fifth match. Sasuke hadn't been late. He'd been here for a while. Although Orochimaru had placed a curse mark on him, it had been sealed. As long as he was careful, it wouldn't be a problem. He had trained hard over the past month, learning many new things, and this was his chance to announce the Uchiha clan's strength to the world. Especially since his opponent was from the Hyuga clan, another jutsu family he couldn't afford to lose, or people would say the Uchiha's Sharingan was inferior to the Hyuga's Byakugan. Neji was also brimming with fighting spirit. He wouldn't underestimate Sasuke and was determined to win in a stunning fashion. The two locked eyes, the air between them crackling with tension and fighting spirit. As the referee called for the match to begin, they stared each other down and entered the field, igniting the crowd's excitement to the max. Chapter 124. Uchiha vs. Hyuga. This was the match everyone was waiting for. The Hyuga clan was currently the most ancient and prestigious family in the ninja world, with the fame of the Byakugan spreading far and wide, and their Jaken, gentle fist, technique was equally renowned. Even though the Uchiha had been wiped out, the might of the Sharingan remained. Everyone wanted to see what kind of performance the Uchiha's sole surviving heir would deliver, and more importantly, they wanted to see which of the two clans would prove stronger. Even the daimyos of both countries were excited, chatting eagerly about the upcoming match. Uchiha Sasuke vs. Hyuga Neji, begin. As Genma announced the start of the match, Sasuke immediately activated his Sharingan, his two Tomo crimson eyes gleaming with a hypnotic intensity. His aura surged. A few seconds later, he dashed toward Neji, short sword already drawn, slashing forward with the hacked Kenjutsu, White Fang swordsmanship. Neji showed no fear. His Byakugan was already active, clearly tracking Sasuke's every move. He raised his hands into the stance of the Hakash, 8 trigrams palm, and, as Sasuke approached, unleashed a rapid barrage of Hakurokuchian sh, 8 trigrams 64 palms, colliding head-on with the blindingly fast White Fang sword technique. Boom! 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 The short sword in Neji's hands clashed in a flurry of afterimages, each impact resounding like muffled thunder. Neji focused on avoiding the blade's lethal edge, counterattacking with precision while using the Byakugan to predict and evade Sasuke's strikes. Sasuke, knowing full well the danger of Neji's chakra-imbued palms, was equally cautious, keeping his distance and dodging whenever necessary. After all, a single solid hit from the Hakahayaku Jason sh, 8 trigrams 113 palms, could seal his tenketsu or even damage his internal organs. The two fought at full strength, locked in a fierce stalemate. Though the audience couldn't fully follow the rapid exchanges, sometimes they couldn't even see the afterimages, it didn't stop their excitement from surging. After more than 10 minutes and several hundred exchanges, neither had gained the upper hand. Both recognized each other's tenacity and knew they couldn't keep this up indefinitely. Almost simultaneously, they disengaged, leaping backward to reset. Neji landed in a Kamehameha pose, not to fire a Kamehameha, of course, but as he thrust his palms forward, the air compressed and blasted out in a shockwave. Hakaksh. 8 trigrams air palm. This mid-range technique was the result of Neji's month of focused training. Sasuke's eyes widened in surprise, but he managed to dodge just in time, though he tumbled across the ground in a less than graceful fashion, cold sweat dripping from his forehead. Had he been a moment slower, the shockwave could have ruptured his internal organs. The Hokage's gentle fist was not to be underestimated. In the audience, Hayashi nodded in approval and said to his younger daughter, "Hanabi, make sure you watch closely. Neji is the most talented of our clan's younger generation, you have a lot to learn from him." Little Hanabi nodded sweetly, but her gaze drifted toward the second-floor competitors' area, where her older sister Hinata sat watching the match anxiously. Though still young, Hanabi had an inkling of her sister's thoughts. It was obvious Hinata believed that with Neji's talent, he should have been the one to inherit the clan's leadership, not her. She was timid, struggled with gentle fist, and it was natural their father favored Neji. Thinking of this, Hanabi sighed softly, feeling that things were complicated. In the second-floor competitors' area, Naruto and Sakura cheered loudly for Sasuke, while Lee enthusiastically shouted encouragement for Neji. Their shouting match made everyone else twitch at the corners of their mouths. At the moment, Neji has the upper hand. "Kakashi, it looks like Sasuke's about to lose," Guy said with his arms crossed and a grin. "Well, let's not jump to conclusions just yet. Sasuke still has a trump card to play," Kakashi replied calmly. "Trump card? What kind of move could give him an edge over Gentle Fist?" "Masaka. Kakashi, you taught Sasuke that technique. That's too risky." "Guy, you're the one who taught your student the Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates release technique. If you can do that, why can't I teach Sasuke Chidori? It's the era of the young, it's time to let them learn and grow." "Ugh." Guy fell silent for a moment, but he couldn't help worrying for Neji. As Kakashi's eternal rival, though Kakashi didn't see it that way, he knew just how dangerous Chidori was. Whether Sasuke could handle it was one thing, but Neji was definitely at risk of losing. Sure enough, down in the arena, Sasuke formed a series of hand seals. Lightning crackled in his left palm as rake, thunder light, sparked. The lightning grew brighter, and in the next second, it coalesced into a crackling orb in Sasuke's hand, buzzing furiously as if 1,000 birds were chirping in unison. Genma's expression instantly turned serious. He knew just how deadly Chidori was and was prepared to intervene at any moment. Neji's Byakugan also saw the concentration of lightning nature chakra, recognizing its extraordinary power. He tensed up, going fully on guard. Raiden, Chidori. Lightning style, Chidori. Whoosh. Sasuke charged at Neji with the Chidori in hand, moving so fast he appeared in front of Neji in the blink of an eye. Neji reacted instantly, spinning his body to generate a semi-spherical barrier around himself. This was the Hyuga clan's Hakakaten, 8 trigrams rotation. The next second, their techniques collided in a blinding explosion. Boom! Chakra erupted at the center of the clash, sending both fighters flying backward and opening a huge gap between them. Clap clap clap! Applause thundered through the stadium, cheers shaking the air. The audience was thrilled, especially by the spectacle of the two big moves colliding head-on. They couldn't contain their excitement, though their praises often missed the mark. After all, what did they know? They were shouting about the prowess of jutsu families, but Chidori and Kaden had nothing to do with jutsu. Genma observed both fighters. They were injured, but still able to continue, so he said nothing for now. Sasuke, however, was visibly frustrated. The Chidori was powerful, yet it hadn't been enough to defeat Neji. The Hyuga clan's Kaden was clearly no joke. It seemed Natsuki's earlier evaluation had been right. Sasuke had been a little too full of himself after learning a few new techniques, thinking he was invincible. But the truth was, there were strong opponents everywhere. One moment of carelessness, and he'd end up eating dirt. Now that he thought about it, it was true. When he first mastered the Chidori, his confidence had swelled, convinced he'd win any match. But looking at his opponent now, Neji's techniques were just as formidable, and his physical abilities were on another level. After such a violent collision, Neji looked unfazed. That was outrageous. Of course, Sasuke didn't realize that Team Guy's training regimen was the most brutal in Konoha. Naturally, their physical conditioning was exceptional. 10 collisions like that wouldn't even faze them. Moreover, Neji was smarter and calmer. He wouldn't lose his cool, even if his moves didn't land. He'd quietly analyze his opponent and find a chance to strike. That was something Sasuke couldn't match yet. Just then, Sasuke gathered chakra once more, forming the Chidori again, and charged forward with a roar. Neji, however, seemed to freeze, not immediately using Kaden. As Sasuke neared, Neji's body suddenly erupted with a surge of chakra, an all too familiar feeling that sent a chill down Guy's spine. Hachiman Tonk Dai Ichi Monday, Kai. 8 Gates Release, First Gate, Gate of Opening, Open. Chapter 125. No one expected this. Neji wasn't sticking to just the Hyuga clan's Jaken. He had actually learned the Hachiman Tonk, 8 Gates Release technique. This was a decision Neji had reached after careful thought. He could see the limitations, or rather, the ceiling of the Hyuga's gentle fist, especially as a branch family member with no access to higher level techniques. If he wanted to grow stronger, he had to learn something else. He needed power. After seeing Natsuki almost kill Orochimaru with a single Asa Kyojaku, Morning Peacock, Neji set his sights on the 8 gates. It was the strongest technique he could realistically learn. After all, Guy-sensei wouldn't hesitate to teach it to him. He'd be a fool not to seize that opportunity. As for the Hyuga clan's rules, the main family refused to teach him advanced techniques, so what was wrong with learning his sensei's techniques? If they had a problem with it, they should have given him the good stuff to learn in the first place. Whoosh! Neji suddenly vanished. Even though he had only opened the first gate, his chakra surged, and his speed jumped a level. Sasuke's Chidori surged forward, and his Sharingan locked onto Neji's form, but his body couldn't keep up. He watched in shock as Neji appeared at his side and struck with lightning-fast Tenketsu strikes, instantly sealing Sasuke's chakra points. Sasuke's chakra was immediately blocked off, and the Chidori dissipated. He was left completely powerless. Wary of any hidden tricks, Neji pressed his fingers toward Sasuke's throat and turned to the referee. Genma immediately called out, "That's enough. Winner, Hyuga Neji from Konoha." "Alright. Well done. That was an incredible fight. Just what you'd expect from the Uchiha and Hyuga clans." The crowd erupted into cheers, the whole arena ignited by the thrilling match. Only the Hyuga clan's members wore sour expressions. After all, Neji hadn't won using gentle fist techniques but instead relied on the 8 gates. This felt like a slap in the face to the Hyuga's pride. Little Hanabi quietly looked up at her father and asked innocently, "Father, what's the 8 gates technique? It looks really strong." Hayashi didn't know how to respond. He wanted to say that the gentle fist was stronger, but the fact remained Neji hadn't won with gentle fist, and the 8 gates had been the decisive factor. If he tried to argue that Neji simply hadn't mastered gentle fist yet, it would raise more uncomfortable questions, like why such a talented child hadn't been taught the stronger techniques. With so many issues tangled up, Hayashi didn't know how to explain it to Hanabi. In the end, he could only fumble an excuse. The 8 gates is a secret technique taught by Neji's team leader. It's powerful, yes, but our Hyuga gentle fist is still stronger. Neji just hasn't fully mastered it yet. Hanabi stared at her father's awkward expression, seeming to see through his flimsy excuse. Still, she didn't press the issue. "Father's such a liar." "Neji, that was awesome. Congratulations." Lee and Tenten cheered, while Guy laughed heartily, striking a triumphant pose. His pride was written all over his face. After all, a win with the 8 gates was a win for him, the teacher. Natsuki also gave Neji a thumbs up. The match had been brilliant, and Neji learning the 8 gates had truly taken him by surprise. It seemed Neji had become more open-minded and smarter. The Hyuga's gentle fist had a long, proud history and was indeed strong, but its potential wasn't infinite, especially for a branch family member like Neji. That Neji had the courage to seek out other paths, taking his destiny into his own hands, was something worth admiring. Meanwhile, Sasuke returned with an ugly expression. Sakura and Naruto didn't know what to say, and even Kakashi remained silent. Neji, however, looked at Sasuke and said solemnly, "You're strong. I look forward to our next match." Sasuke immediately shot back, "You won this time, but I'll definitely beat you next time." See? Neji's single sentence did more to motivate Sasuke than any comforting words could have. Sasuke was instantly fired up, and he didn't let the loss drag him down. Kakashi, in turn, breathed a deep sigh of relief. He'd been worried that Sasuke might spiral emotionally after a loss, which could trigger Orochimaru's curse mark. Thankfully, it hadn't happened. All in all, though Sasuke had lost, he was safe, and that was what mattered. Plus, Sasuke's performance wasn't bad, he'd still likely earn a Chunin promotion. With the 5th match concluded, it was time for the 6th. 6th match, Natsuki from Konoha vs. Gaara from Tsunade. Natsuki nodded to his friends, then shunshined into the center of the arena. Wearing his sunglasses, he looked effortlessly cool, immediately drawing cheers from the audience. From the stands, the shopkeeper couldn't help himself. Hey, hey! That's my future son-in-law. The people around him rolled their eyes. Yeah, we know already. We've been neighbors for years, you don't have to keep bragging. Natsuki ignored the commotion, raising his gaze toward the red-haired boy with the gourd on his back. His eyes were like a still lake, without a ripple of emotion, no provocation, but also a subtle sense of disregard, as if Gaara wasn't worth his attention. Gaara was instantly triggered. His bloodshot eyes gleamed with murderous intent. Blood! Blood! Kill! I'll kill you! Clatter! Temari and Kankuro, standing by, were filled with worry. Be careful! He's strong! Gaara paid them no mind. He opened the gourd on his back, sand spilling out and lifting him into the air. His bloodthirsty gaze locked onto Natsuki, as if he were ready to tear him to pieces. Genma looked a little uneasy, but he still announced the match's start. Gaara didn't seem to hear, standing still as a statue, eyes fixed on Natsuki. Natsuki couldn't care less what the red-haired boy was thinking. He casually threw out several kunao to test the waters. Sure enough, the sand automatically deflected them. This wasn't just for show, it was to demonstrate to the audience, especially the daimyo, that Gaara could block attacks with his sand, making him a formidable opponent. Once Natsuki defeated him in a stylish and impressive manner, it would naturally earn him high marks. The next moment, Natsuki formed a rapid string of hand seals and slammed his palm onto the ground. Doton, Dorieki. Earth style, earth wall. Earthen walls erupted from the ground, surrounding Gaara in a wide formation large enough to prevent the sand from reaching him, yet much smaller than the arena, allowing Natsuki to control the field more easily. Natsuki leapt onto the wall, casually forming one-handed seals. Then he opened his mouth and unleashed a torrent of water. Sudan, Suidan Ha. Water style, water severing wave. Boom. Water flooded the space within the walls, instantly filling it. Gaara was submerged in an instant. His gourd sand tried to shield him, but the moment it emerged, it was soaked and rendered useless, unable to rise, much less protect him. Not good. Gaara, watch out! Temari and Kankuro's faces paled. They hadn't expected Natsuki to pull this move. Using water style? That was a hard counter to Gaara's sand. No matter how absolute the sand's defense was, it couldn't withstand such a massive flood. This was a total shutdown. Facing an opponent as overwhelming as Natsuki, Gaara was in serious trouble. Chapter 126. Neji. Natsuki's friends couldn't help but cheer. Everyone had seen how formidable Gaara's sand was during Lee's fight. Now, Natsuki had first used Doton, earth style, to create an enclosed space, then flooded it with water. Sand and water were a terrible combination. Once wet, sand was done for. Kakashi and Guy exchanged a glance, thinking the same thing. So this is how you counter him? Brilliant. Inside the water, Gaara was not doing well. Living his whole life in the arid land of wind, Gaara barely dared to drink water, let alone be submerged in it. Maybe he didn't even know how to swim. Luckily, he had chakra. By using chakra, he barely managed to float toward the surface. As for his sand, forget it. It was completely useless in water. But just as he was about to break the surface, he saw Natsuki rapidly forming hand seals. Then Natsuki thrust both hands, crackling with electricity, into the water. Oh no! 3. Raiden, Dend. Lightning style, ground surge. As Natsuki's electrified hands plunged into the water, powerful currents surged through the entire area. Everyone knew water conducted electricity. How could Gaara possibly escape? The next second, a scream erupted from under the water. Even though the water muffled it, Gaara's scream was harrowing after all, he had always been shielded by his sand and had never truly experienced pain. Now, the shock of being electrocuted was something he simply couldn't bear. If it weren't for his chakra forming a weak barrier, he probably would have choked on the water too, unable even to scream. Gaara! Temari and Kankuro ran around anxiously, but they couldn't enter the arena to save him. The spectators, too, shuddered as they watched the water crackle with electricity and heard Gaara's agonized cries. They couldn't help but imagine just how painful it must have been to elicit screams like that, truly terrifying. But soon, cheers erupted. After all, this was a ninja battle, and such superhuman abilities were to be expected. Besides, most of the audience were Konoha villagers. Seeing their own ninja so overwhelmingly suppressing an outsider, this was a matter of village pride. Of course they cheered and applauded. Before long, the water surface split apart. Gaara, wrapped in a cloak of chakra, burst into the air. Sand surged from his gourd, lifting him up and suspending him midair. Natsuki wasn't surprised in the slightest. Gaara was strong. Even if his sand was useless in water, his chakra reserves were considerable enough to get him out of the situation. But judging by his scorched, battered appearance, and the look of utter hatred in his eyes, it was clear that the electrocution had hurt. Damn it! Kill! I'll kill you! Gaara roared, raising his hands to summon sand. Sabaku SS. Desert Funeral. Whoosh! A massive sandstorm surged toward Natsuki, clearly aiming to crush him. His friends couldn't help but feel tense. Natsuki's expression remained serious. With a swift jab, moonwalk, he soared into the air. For him, the sky was no longer off limits. He could run freely in the air, and Ray Shunshin, lightning body flicker, was at his fingertips. He zipped across the battlefield, dodging the sand clouds, and in a blink, appeared right in front of Gaara, fist raised. The sand tried to block him, but Natsuki's punch was no ordinary strike. It was heavier and more brutal than Lee's. Even without the 8 gates, a single punch was enough to shatter Gaara's sand defense and land squarely on his face. Gaara, still drenched and without his sand armor restored, was stunned by the impact. Blood streamed from the corner of his mouth. For the first time, he saw his own blood. But Natsuki didn't stop. His fists rained down mercilessly, and Gaara's sand barrier couldn't keep up. In moments, Gaara was covered in injuries, unable to fight back. Gaara wasn't skilled in taijutsu. He couldn't dodge Natsuki's blows at all. He tried to counterattack with sand, but Natsuki's Ray Shunshin was too fast, while the sand was too slow. It was useless. In the end, Gaara had no choice. He gritted his teeth and activated his ultimate defense, encasing himself in a giant sphere of sand, sealing himself inside a black room where no blows could reach him. Here it is. Gaara's ultimate defense. Temari and Kankuro breathed a sigh of relief. They had been terrified Gaara would be beaten to death on the spot. This guy Natsuki was terrifying. His earlier fight with Orochimaru hadn't been because Orochimaru was holding back. It was because Natsuki was truly strong. And now, he was beating Gaara so badly that Gaara had no choice but to hide in his ultimate defense. From the highest seats in the audience, the daimyos of the two countries exchanged glances. The fire daimyo wore a satisfied smirk. Clearly, Konoha had stolen the show. After all, Konoha had the most candidates in these finals, and so far, all the matches had ended in Konoha victories. If they won this 6th match as well, it would be a total sweep for Konoha. This Gaara of the desert was supposed to be Tsunagakure's trump card, but now he was being utterly crushed by a Konoha ninja. The fire daimyo thought smugly, this round is mine. Wind country? KO. Natsuki looked at the giant sand sphere and clapped his hands together. The seal on his left palm activated, and he summoned the Maken Senjin, demonic blade Senjin. He drew the blade from his palm, his stance exuding a cool and composed aura. Channeling chakra into the blade, its fragments extended outward, elongating into a piercing thrust. The blade, crackling with lightning, shot forward and pierced straight through the sand sphere, impaling Gaara's shoulder. The electricity surged into Gaara's body again, scorching him inside and out. His screams this time were even more pitiful than when he had been electrocuted in the water. In the face of overwhelming power, so-called absolute defense is meaningless. Natsuki's words echoed through the entire arena, leaving the spectators and the daimyos deeply shocked and utterly impressed. This would undoubtedly earn him top marks from the daimyos. Once Tsunade returned, Natsuki's Chunin promotion would be a sure thing. Especially in a time when Konoha desperately needed manpower, his status would only rise. The sand sphere crumbled, falling away to reveal Gaara's battered and broken body. Natsuki retracted Maken Senjin, returned it to his left palm, and performed another Rei Shunshin, appearing above Gaara. With a single punch, he slammed Gaara into the ground. Boom! Gaara smashed into the arena floor, creating a crater as he let out another agonized scream, mouth wide open in a silent wail. Natsuki landed on Gaara's body, the tip of Maken Senjin resting against Gaara's open mouth. Maken Senjin will fragment and burrow into your body, destroying your insides. Your so-called absolute defense is useless. Natsuki's cold voice declared the outcome as he glanced at Genma. Genma quickly checked Gaara. He wasn't a sand clone. Enough. Winner, Natsuki from Konoha. Hearing this, Natsuki sheathed the blade into his left palm and turned away in a smooth, stylish motion, completely ignoring even Genma's look of admiration. Chapter 127. The audience immediately erupted in thunderous applause and cheers, their voices soaring to the heavens. It was clear that Natsuki's stunning performance had thoroughly captivated them. The shopkeeper once again shouted at the top of his lungs, "That's my future son-in-law! That's my son-in-law!" This only made those around him even more jealous, and they felt like beating him up. The fire daimyo looked at the wind daimyo's dark, foul expression and almost wanted to dance from smugness. This time, they had truly stolen the show. It felt absolutely fantastic. Yay! Natsuki won. Of course he did. Natsuki's so amazing. Yet. Natsuki even fought against Orochimaru. Beating a mere sand genin is nothing for him. Their friends were all excited, Rainya and Megami wearing looks of pride, and Aoba even wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. Kakashi nodded. Well, it was expected. Guy, however, looked a bit regretful. What a shame. Natsuki didn't even use the Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates release technique. But I suppose the enemy wasn't strong enough to warrant it. Tenten didn't say a word. She simply smiled at Natsuki. This was her boyfriend's moment to shine. In contrast to the Konoha ninjas' excitement, the Suna ninjas wore ugly expressions. Even though they had other intentions behind the scenes, seeing their Jinchuriki so thoroughly defeated by a Konoha genin still stung. Temari and Kankuro didn't care about pride. They immediately leaped into the arena, rushing toward Gaara. But before they could reach him, their expressions changed dramatically. Natsuki, who hadn't left yet, also noticed something was wrong. He immediately guessed what was happening and wasn't surprised. He simply turned, eyes wary, to face Gaara. At that moment, Gaara's demeanor was completely off. He was muttering something under his breath, eyes filled with murderous intent. His chakra was surging wildly, clear signs of an impending transformation. Genma quickly tried to intervene. Gaara of the desert. The match is over. I don't care about that. I'll kill him. Gaara! Gaara! I'll kill you all! Gaara screamed like a madman, his gaze turning feral. Half his face suddenly became covered in something monstrous, his arm transforming into a huge, dirty yellow beast's claw. His body also started morphing, taking on a beast-like shape. Genma's expression changed. What is this, a monster? No, it's a tailed beast. Could it be, your Jinchuriki? Gaara didn't answer. He continued transforming, quickly becoming a half-human, half-beast form. His eyes were wild and bloodthirsty, and he let out a feral roar that sent shockwaves through the entire arena, startling the audience. Hiruzen shot to his feet, shocked. What's happening? What is that child? His answer came not in words, but in a kunao. The Kazekage suddenly restrained Hiruzen, holding a kunao to his throat and leaping onto the rooftop with him. The guards tried to intervene, but the Kazekage's bodyguards blocked their way. Hiruzen demanded angrily, Kazekage, are you breaking the alliance between our two nations? The Kazekage's voice was raspy and sinister as he smirked. Hee. Even now, you still can't see the truth, Sarutobi-sensei. It's you. Orochimaru. Hiruzen's eyes widened in realization. No wonder the Kazekage had been acting so strangely. He was actually Orochimaru in disguise. So that was it. Tsunade had colluded with Orochimaru to attack Konoha. And the answer quickly became clear. Feathers began to fall from the sky, and the entire audience soon fell unconscious. It was a mass genjutsu. Ordinary people couldn't resist it, and even some genin succumbed to it. Yes, that means you, Naruto. Soon, figures in the stands began stripping off their disguises, revealing their true identities. Each wore a forward protector of Otogakure, and 4 particularly strong individuals moved to encircle Orochimaru and Hiruzen on the rooftop. These 4 were the elite of Otogakure, known as the Sound 4, Kidomaru, Teiwa, Sakan, and Yukon, and Jirobo. The 4 immediately activated a formation. Nin, Shijkekai. Ninja Art, 4 Violet Flame Formation. In the next instant, a rectangular, purple barrier enveloped the rooftop, trapping Orochimaru and Hiruzen inside. The Anbu outside couldn't get in to save the Hokage. Now then, Sarutobi-sensei, it's time for us to settle this once and for all. Meanwhile, Kakashi, Gai, Kurane, and the other Jonin gathered together, preparing to fight the Otogakure ninja under Kabuto's command. As for the rest, Naruto, Lee, Koji, they had all fallen victim to the genjutsu. Tenton, Neji, and a few others had managed to dispel it just in time and quickly woke up Naruto, Lee, Koji, and the others. Shikamaru, who had been pretending to be unconscious, got kicked awake by Rainya. At this point, with Natsuki absent, there were 14 of the Konoha rookie genin left. Faced with the sudden crisis, they didn't know what to do. Tenten immediately took charge. Neji, you're the calmest. Shikamaru, you're the smartest. We'll follow your lead, tell us what to do, quickly. Everyone nodded in agreement. They all supported Tenton's proposal. Neji and Shikamaru exchanged a glance, neither declining. Even Shikamaru, despite his usual laziness, knew he had to take responsibility now. The situation was clear, something was seriously wrong. As Konoha shinobi, they couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Even as genin, they had to act. Especially since Natsuki was facing the transformed Gaara. They couldn't just ignore it. Neji immediately said, Natsuki's situation is the most urgent. I'll go, along with Sasuke, Tenten, and Shino, to assist him. The rest of you will follow Shikamaru's lead. Is that okay? Shikamaru nodded without hesitation. Good. Go quickly, Natsuki needs backup. The 4 nodded and dashed off toward the arena. Shikamaru wasted no time giving orders. Sakura, Megami, you're the medical ninja. Be ready to treat anyone who's injured. Rainya, Ino, Hinata, you'll protect the medical ninja. Naruto, Kaiba, Lee, Koji, and I will form a team. Our job is to help the Jonin hold back the weaker enemies. If we see any of our comrades injured, we'll bring them back to the medical team immediately. Naruto complained, why do Sasuke and the others get to go fight the monster while we're stuck fighting small fry? That's not fair. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. If you had their level of skill, I'd send you too. Since we all agreed to follow my lead, you'd better listen and stop whining. Everyone stared at Naruto. As proper shinobi, once a leader gave orders, you weren't supposed to complain or argue. This wasn't the time to act selfishly. Feeling the weight of their gazes, Naruto finally shut up. Shikamaru's plan was solid. While they had numbers, their strength wasn't enough to take on the real powerhouses. Rushing in would be suicide. It was better to focus on holding back weaker enemies and acting as battlefield medics. That was the most they could do. Chapter 128. At this moment, Tenten, Neji, Sasuke, and Shino sprinted down the steps. On the way, they encountered Tosokane trying to block them. Without hesitation, Tenten drew her Ryugan Shakushkan, Dragon Eye telescopic sword, and 3 extended blades instantly pierced through Tosokane's body, sending him flying off to the side, his fate unknown. Such a cannon fodder character wasn't worth Tenten's attention. Sasuke glanced at the Ryugan Shakushkan, feeling that this sword was truly impressive. Tosokane wasn't weak even without his gauntlet, he still had some strength, yet Tenten had taken him down in a single strike. This showed that the sword was no ordinary weapon. Of course, Sasuke also acknowledged Tenten's skills. Not everyone could wield ninja tools with such mastery. Clearly, Tenten had genuine talent for manipulating ninja tools. The 4 of them quickly arrived at the scene. Seeing Gaara's monstrous form, they couldn't help but swallow nervously. Not far away, Temari and Kankuro were trying to reach Gaara, but Tenten and Shino immediately blocked their path. Old rivals faced off, and the atmosphere instantly grew tense. Neji demanded, what is Tsunagakure's intention? Why are you launching an attack? Are you betraying the alliance between our nations? Temari and Kankuro ignored him, focused solely on Gaara's condition. But they didn't dare approach. Memories of their childhood, marked by the terror of Gaara's rampages, paralyzed them. Seeing their reactions, Neji didn't press further. Instead, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Sasuke, watching Gaara warily. They dared not make a reckless move. Natsuki! Neji, don't come over! Natsuki didn't even look back. This guy is Tsunade Ichibai Jinkraki. He's only in a half-tailed beast state right now. I can handle it. Tenten, Shino, keep those siblings back. Neji, Sasuke, go assist Genma senpai. He's facing Tsunade Jainin Baki and a few elite Chunin. You two are best suited for the task. Sasuke's eyes lit up with excitement. Elite Chunin? Sounds like fun. At that moment, Genma was holding his own against Baki and Fortunin, but he was clearly struggling. Seeing Neji and Sasuke arrive, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Genma knew the two well handling a Chunin each would be no problem. He immediately ordered, Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga Neji, you've come just in time. Take on a Chunin each and ease my burden. Got it. Without hesitation, Sasuke drew his short sword and charged at Asuna ninja. Neji wasn't far behind, activating his Byakugan and launching into the Hakurokuchin SH, 8 trigrams 64 palms. Baki, of course, couldn't just stand by. He moved to engage, but Genma focused on keeping him tied up. While it was difficult to hold off a Jainin and two Chunin, it was far easier than handling 5 opponents alone. As a special Jainin, Genma had his own tricks he could manage. Meanwhile, Natsuki faced off against Gaara in his half-tailed beast state. Gaara was barely conscious, flinging sand in a frenzy as he attacked Natsuki. Sometimes, his gross, yellowish beast-like arms swept across the ground, or his tail lashed out, striking with tremendous force. However, his attacks were erratic and disorganized. There was no real threat. Natsuki even took a quick glance at the stands, confirming that his future father-in-law was unconscious under the genjutsu. Luckily, there were no nearby enemy ninja, so the area seemed safe. Good. He could focus on the fight. He rapidly formed hand seals and slapped his palm to the ground. Doton, Chten Tenten. Earth style, soaring spin. The ground trembled, and a giant spinning top burst upward, launching Gaara into the sky. Natsuki leaped up with jab, his fists raining down in a relentless barrage. Aura! His punches shattered Gaara's beast arm sand, and Gaara himself took a brutal beating. Gaara tried to retaliate, but his attacks were ineffective. Natsuki continued to pummel him without mercy. Natsuki wasn't about to talk him down or hold back. Since Gaara wanted to go wild, he'd beat him down until he couldn't. Only when Gaara learned to fear would he listen. As for killing Gaara, that wasn't on the table. After all, Gaara was Tsunade Jinkraki. Killing him would mean removing their tailed beast force, potentially sparking a war. Then again, Tsunade hadn't dared to go to war even with a Jinkraki. Would they really dare without one? It was hard to say. Some things couldn't be judged on assumptions alone. For now, Natsuki chose not to overthink it. He'd just subdue Gaara first. Below, Temari and Kankuro were growing frantic, but Tenton and Shino held them back tightly. Temari wasn't a match for Tenton, and Kankuro was firmly suppressed by Shino. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Natsuki continued to beat Gaara, glancing occasionally at the 4 violet flames barrier. Inside, Orochimaru had already begun Edo Tensei, impure world reincarnation, summoning Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama. The battle against Hiruzen Sarutobi was heating up. But honestly, Hiruzen was doomed. That much was certain. The fact that Hiruzen had known about Orochimaru's connection to Otagakure yet still allowed their ninja to enter the Chunin exams was baffling. Not to mention, Orochimaru had been appearing in Konoha repeatedly, clearly up to no good, yet Hiruzen hadn't taken it seriously enough. Now, trapped in the barrier, the Anbu unable to assist, he could only face Orochimaru alone. Frankly, Hiruzen had no one to blame but himself. His own negligence had led to this, and now he would have to sacrifice himself, and no one could say otherwise. Natsuki refocused on his fight. He kept hammering Gaara until, unexpectedly, Gaara passed out cold. So fragile? That's all it took. Natsuki rolled his eyes and quickly used Suier no Jutsu, water prison technique, to trap Gaara. But the next moment, Gaara's eyes snapped open. Only, they were no longer human eyes. The cross-shaped pupils were unmistakably those of Shukaku. The Tanuki had awakened. Shukaku had just woken up, ready to roar with laughter, but instead got a mouthful of water and nearly choked. Who's the bastard that dared to drown Lord Shukaku? Shukaku's shrill voice exploded across the arena, and in the blink of an eye, he swelled in size. With a single surge, he shattered the water prison, growing to dozens of meters tall. Compared to him, Natsuki was smaller than an ant. Everyone fighting nearby was stunned, staring at Shukaku in disbelief. Natsuki's friends panicked. Natsuki! It's dangerous! Tenton was especially worried. Natsuki! Get out of there! But Natsuki remained calm. After all, wasn't this exactly why he'd worked so hard to get stronger? Even if he couldn't defeat a tailed beast, he could at least survive a fight. He'd do whatever it took to hold his ground. Relax, Tenton. Did you forget what I've been learning this past month? Even if I can't win, I can still escape. Chapter 129. Natsuki's voice rang out, instantly easing Tenton's worries. That's right. While Natsuki's Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, wasn't yet fully mastered, he could still use it in emergencies. If it came down to it, he could always run away. Even if he got injured, he had senzu beans for recovery. So there was nothing to worry about. Shino quickly asked, Tenton, does Natsuki have a technique for staying alive? Tenton gave him a reassuring look. Natsuki will be fine. Let's deal with our enemies quickly and get out of here. This area is too dangerous. We'll get caught up in the fight and just become a hindrance to Natsuki. Since Tenton said so, Shino felt reassured and increased the intensity of his attacks. Neji and Sasuke, who had been worried and shocked just moments ago, also relaxed and focused back on their battles. Genma was briefly stunned, but a look of joy flashed in his eyes. He more or less guessed what Natsuki and Tenton were hinting at. Natsuki hadn't used Hiraishin yet because it wasn't stable enough for combat, but it should be reliable enough for escape. With this realization, Genma also felt relieved. Truly impressive, kid. I didn't expect you to actually master it. Meanwhile, Kakashi, Guy, Kurane, and the other Jonin were still battling Kabuto's Otagakure forces. Seeing Gaara fully transform into a tailed beast, they couldn't help but panic. I didn't expect Gaara to be a Jinchuriki. This is bad. Kakashi's expression was grave. Should we hold the line while you go assist? Kurane suggested. No. Natsuki is there, so we don't have to worry, at least not yet. Our priority is to finish the battle here and then go help, Kakashi replied, anxious but not as panicked as one might expect. Exactly. With Natsuki there, we're fine. Guy and Rainya both showed complete confidence in Natsuki. After all, Natsuki was someone who had fought Orochimaru to a standstill. If even someone like him couldn't handle a tailed beast, there wasn't much the rest of them could do anyway. Besides, Natsuki hadn't run away at the sight of the tailed beast. He clearly had a trump card, maybe even opening the 6th gate of the Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates release technique, or something. Hearing this, the other Jonin also relaxed a bit. Natsuki's strength was no secret. Everyone had heard at least some of the rumors. However, Kabuto looked displeased. Oi, Konoha Jonin, aren't you placing too much faith in that kid named Natsuki? That's a tailed beast. Aren't you afraid he'll get himself killed? Aoba's voice turned icy. If that's the case, then hurry up and die. I'm eager to go help my student. With that, the battle resumed, full force. Meanwhile, Shikamaru's team was also worried. Naruto stared dumbfounded at Shukaku, muttering under his breath, so. Gaara is like me. He has a monster inside him. Maybe I understand him. Don't just stand there, Naruto. Get that injured Chunin to Sakura, now. Shikamaru shouted. Naruto snapped out of it and rushed off with the unconscious Chunin on his back, but his gaze kept drifting toward Shukaku, as if he wanted to go over there. Gaara. Maybe I do understand him, because I'm the same. At that moment, Shukaku came crashing down from the sky, landing squarely in the arena and creating a massive crater. The resulting shockwave sent smoke and debris flying. If the arena weren't large enough, the sheer impact could have killed half the audience. Then Shukaku's eyes locked onto Natsuki, who was floating in the air, the one who had dared to drown him in the water prison. Haha! I found the one I want to kill. Watch this, from the great Lord Shukaku. Phaeton, Ronkyudan. Wind style, drilling air bullet. Shukaku actually formed hand seals, then opened his mouth and fired a massive wind bullet straight at Natsuki. The worst part? Natsuki couldn't dodge behind him. A little farther back were the spectators. But Natsuki wasn't afraid of some mere wind bullet. He quickly formed hand seals and spat out a huge water sphere. Sudden, Suidan. Water style, water bullet. Boom. Because he pumped in a huge amount of chakra, his water sphere was massive, matching Shukaku's wind bullet in size. The two orbs collided midair and exploded, shaking the arena. The impact sent a shockwave through the stadium, knocking spectators over and making their ears ring, but thankfully, no one was seriously hurt. Oh ho! Not bad for an ant. Fine then. Lord Shukaku will fight you in a chakra battle, let's see who runs out of juice first. Ha ha ha. Shukaku seemed to find a new game, spreading his arms wide and laughing maniacally. He prepared to form hand seals again. But Natsuki wasn't about to give him the chance. He used Rei Shunshin, flashing to Shukaku's belly, and spread his hands. Two massive water discs, each 5 meters in diameter, formed in his palms. Zzzzz. Zzzzz. The water discs spun rapidly, distorting the air around them as if space itself were being torn apart. Shukaku. Take this. Super water circle slash. Whoosh. Whoosh. The water discs moved so fast that Shukaku didn't even have time to finish forming hand seals. They struck his hands in an instant. Two clean, crisp slicing sounds echoed, and Shukaku's massive arms were severed on the spot, crashing to the ground. Shukaku froze, stunned, eyes wide in disbelief. Then, a blood-curdling scream erupted from his mouth. It hurts. It hurts. You damn human. How dare you cut off Lord Shukaku's arms? I'll kill you. His scream seemed to tear through the sky itself, heard even beyond the arena. Everyone heard it. Everyone looked at Shukaku in utter disbelief and saw that yes, Shukaku's arms had really been cut off. That was a tailed beast. And Natsuki had cut off a tailed beast's arms. Was there anything more absurd than this? The Suna ninja were all stunned. They had grown up being tormented by the rampaging tailed beast, and in their minds, the tailed beast was an unstoppable force, a nightmare made flesh. They had brought the Jinchuriki to Konoha specifically to let the tailed beast wreak havoc and help destroy the village from within. Yet now, the tailed beast's arms had been severed by a Konoha genin. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Kai, it seems we've all underestimated Natsuki. He's already surpassed us, Kakashi murmured in awe. Ha ha ha. So full of youth. That kid didn't let us down. Guy burst out laughing. He's my student, Aoba declared proudly. The other Jainin couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Damn it. Just half a student like that would be enough for us. How did Aoba get so lucky to have Natsuki as his team member? Even Kabuto was dumbfounded. Just a moment ago, he'd mocked the Konoha Jainin for placing too much faith in that little brat Natsuki, but now, the slap to the face came so fast it almost left a mark. Sure, Natsuki had fought Orochimaru to a standstill in the Forest of Death, which was impressive enough. But this was on a whole other level. Clearly, Orochimaru hadn't mentioned that little detail to Kabuto, or the man wouldn't have thought this way. Chapter 130. Natsuki is amazing. Naruto gently laid down the injured Chunin on his back, his eyes never leaving the distant Shukaku. Rainya, standing guard over the two medical nin, proudly declared, of course. He's our boss, mine and Megami's. Of course he's amazing. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata couldn't help but roll their eyes. Natsuki being amazing has nothing to do with him being your boss, right? Only Megami stayed focused on her work. She knew her boss was strong, so she trusted him to handle the dangerous enemies. Her job as a medical nin was to heal the wounded, so she didn't have time to care about anything else. Seeing Megami so dedicated, Sakura snapped out of it and refocused on helping her treat the injured. Meanwhile, after severing Shukaku's arms, Natsuki stared at the fallen limbs with a bit of greed in his eyes. After all, they were chakra-formed arms. If he could seal them for himself, they'd be like massive batteries, no more worrying about chakra depletion. But, he didn't know any sealing techniques. Damn it! What a missed opportunity. Once Tsunade returns, I need to figure out a way to learn some sealing techniques. Natsuki grumbled internally. Seeing Shukaku's furious state, he found the constant screeching a bit annoying. But of course, Shukaku wasn't one to take this lightly. Though regenerating his arms was slow, he still had other attacks. Shukaku opened his mouth wide. A giant, swirling sphere of dense, condensed chakra slowly formed in front of it. A tailed beast bomb. The Tanuki was about to unleash its ultimate move. Natsuki didn't waste a second. He hurled multiple special kunao around, embedding them into the ground. As they landed, they linked together, forming a massive, makeshift barrier formation that surrounded Shukaku in the center. Then he raised his hand, a swirling blue water sphere forming in his palm, spiraling and radiating intense heat. Many of the fighters nearby glanced over and were stunned, a single thought flashing through their minds. Is that the fourth Hokage's raise nan? Sudan, Duzashio Futon. Water style, whirlpool boil bomb. Natsuki hurled the spiraling water sphere forward. Before Shukaku could finish forming the tailed beast bomb, the whirlpool boil bomb collided directly with the half-formed sphere. Shukaku's expression twisted in horror. Oh no! Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted, engulfing Shukaku completely. The shockwave roared outward, sending searing heat in all directions. Thankfully, Natsuki's barrier formation held back most of the blast, containing the worst of the energy. However, the formation wasn't strong enough to hold for long. It eventually shattered under the force. Spectators were knocked off their feet, and many were scorched by the intense heat. But what could Natsuki do? In such a desperate situation, this was the best he could manage. If anything, blame Shukaku. Or maybe blame Konoha's knowledge monopoly. If they'd just let him learn higher-level barrier techniques, this wouldn't have been a problem. It certainly wasn't Natsuki's fault. He did his best. Meanwhile, Genma, Sasuke, Neji, Tenten, Shino, and the Suna ninja were all forced to dodge, stunned by the sheer scale of the explosion. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, a Konoha genin unleashing such a devastating attack, and it looked like the tailed beast bomb itself had been destroyed in the blast. Could it be, had the tailed beast actually been killed? All battles across the field temporarily halted as everyone turned to stare, unable to believe their eyes. Even Orochimaru, Hashirama, Tobirama, and Hiruzen, locked in fierce combat, paused for a moment. Orochimaru licked his lips, eyes glinting with intrigue. Is that Natsuki-kun? I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. Though Hashirama was under control, he still retained his own consciousness. He couldn't help but marvel. That's Konoha's prodigy of the new generation? He's already capable of fighting the One Tail, truly impressive. Tobirama glanced at Hiruzen. Monkey, who is that kid? Hiruzen sighed deeply. That's Natsuki, a very promising child. Konoha's future. He already defeated Orochimaru once before, but I didn't expect him to be capable of fighting a tailed beast now. It seems I underestimated him. Had I known, I wouldn't have had him participate in the Chunin exams. I should have promoted him straight to Jonin. Hiruzen couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. Tobirama, for his part, was dumbfounded. A genin? That kind of strength, and he's still a genin? Monkey, how the hell did you become Hokage? The moment he beat Orochimaru, you should have made him a Jonin, or at least a special Jonin. What's the point of having him take the Chunin exams? You're wasting talent. Hiruzen felt nothing but awkwardness. He truly regretted it. If he had promoted Natsuki earlier, they would have had another powerful Jonin ready to handle this crisis. Sure, Natsuki was fighting the enemy now, but with a different status, he could have played an even bigger role. For example, as a Jonin, he could have been by Hiruzen's side as a personal guard, and with Natsuki's keen intuition, they might have uncovered Orochimaru's disguise earlier. It's too late to say anything now. Sarutobi-sensei, it's time for you to die. Konoha's decaying windmill needs to be torn down and rebuilt anew. You relics of the past, need to disappear. Orochimaru sneered and resumed controlling Hashirama and Tobirama to fight. Hiruzen could only grit his teeth and continue the battle. In the center of the arena, the dust slowly settled. Shukaku was nowhere to be seen. Only a massive crater remained. At the bottom of the crater lay a small, unconscious, red-haired boy. Gaara. Did Shukaku retreat back into the host? Everyone stared in shock, unable to recover for a long time. Even Natsuki took a moment to process what had happened. He used Ray Shunshin to flash over to Gaara, touched his nose, and confirmed that he was still alive, just heavily injured. As for Shukaku, it looked like the whirlpool boil bomb had completely overwhelmed him, scaring him enough to retreat back into Gaara. Good, one less headache to deal with. Tenten. Are you okay? Tenten and Shino had already subdued the siblings Temari and Kankuro. They rushed over, worried. I'm fine. Just burned a lot of chakra, didn't even get hurt. Natsuki gave a reassuring smile, glancing at Tenten and Shino. Both were unharmed as well. It seemed Temari and Kankuro hadn't been much of a challenge. As expected of his girlfriend and his close friend utterly reliable. Natsuki turned his gaze elsewhere. Sasuke and Neji had each defeated a Chunin and were now engaged with another opponent, taking the pressure off Genma significantly. With only Baki left, Genma had a much easier time holding his own. In fact, Baki and the remaining Suna shinobi seemed hesitant to keep fighting. Natsuki's overwhelming display had shaken their resolve. Hatch Iman Tonk, Dman, Kai. 8 gates release, 5th gate of limit, open. Natsuki didn't waste time. He activated the 5th gate and flashed over to Baki one punch, and Baki was down. Chapter 131. The two remaining Chunin from Tsunagakura lost all will to fight after seeing their sole Jonin defeated, and they were quickly subdued by Sasuke and Neji. At that moment, Tenten and Shino arrived, escorting the captured Temari siblings. Genma let out a long, relieved breath. You guys really helped a lot. Without you, I couldn't have handled this alone. Especially you, Natsuki. You even managed to defeat a Baijiu. That's truly astonishing. Sasuke and Neji's eyes burned with admiration as they looked at Natsuki. Perhaps only now did they understand this was Natsuki's true strength. Being able to defeat a monster like a Baijiu, wasn't that already comparable to the Hokage's power? When would they ever reach that level? Tenten and Shino weren't surprised in the slightest, and they even looked a little smug. After all, they were the closest to Natsuki. Genma-senpai, you flatter me. Natsuki replied humbly, then asked. Senpai, what should we do now? Please give your orders. Genma nodded, sweeping his gaze across the area. Without hesitation, he issued instructions. You are with Hokage-sama, and Kakashi, Guy, and the others are covering this area, so we don't have to worry. I received a message from Raid. There's a large group of sound and sand shinobi attacking the village's defensive lines, and a 3-headed giant snake causing chaos. Natsuki, you're the fastest, so head there first for support. I'll bring the other 4 to follow up. Understood. Natsuki and the others immediately accepted the order. Tenton, pass out some soldier pills so everyone can recover a bit, Natsuki added. Right, got it. Tenton hurriedly took out a bottle of soldier pills, handing one to each person. She also swallowed one herself. After all, the earlier fight had consumed a lot of chakra. They had to replenish it, or they'd become a burden in the next battle. Natsuki reminded Tenton to stay safe, then used the lightning body flicker technique to instantly reappear in front of Megami and the others. Boss/Natsuki-kun! The group exclaimed excitedly. Clearly, they had witnessed Natsuki's magnificent display of defeating the monster, and their eyes were filled with admiration. I'm glad you're all okay. Natsuki waved his hand, then said. Megami, earlier during my battle with that monster, the audience area was affected. Please go check and provide medical assistance as soon as possible. Hopefully, there weren't any casualties. Now I've been told that enemies are attacking the village defenses, and Genma-senpai asked me to support them. I'll head out first. With that, he vanished once again using the lightning body flicker technique. Oh. Leave it to me, boss. Megami quickly responded, though she wasn't sure if Natsuki heard her. Natsuki-kun is really incredible. Not only did he defeat that monster, but he's also been entrusted with a mission by a special Jonin, Hinata said softly, her eyes filled with admiration. Of course. He's our boss. Rainya said proudly, earning eye rolls from everyone else. But they didn't waste time. Since there were no injured around, they hurried to check the audience area, hoping no spectators were harmed. Just then, Shikamaru's team also returned. After learning what had happened, they helped transport the injured. Meanwhile, Naruto took the opportunity to approach Gaara, who seemed to have regained some consciousness. Naruto began his signature talk. Hey, Gaara, you know, I understand you better than anyone, because I'm just like you. At that moment, Natsuki had already left the arena. From a distance, he saw a 3-headed giant snake rampaging around. Many Konoha shinobi were desperately attacking it, but their efforts were almost futile, and they were getting injured instead. Elsewhere, sound and sand shinobi were wreaking havoc, and the Konoha forces were stretched thin, barely able to keep up. The death of the third Hokage is practically a given, and I've already used my trump cards. There's no need to hide my strength anymore. In that case, it's time to shine. Natsuki muttered to himself. Using the body flicker technique, he sped towards the 3-headed giant snake. With a wave of his hand, he unleashed an enormous Mizu Enzan, water circular slash. In the next instant, the sound of fabric being torn echoed through the air as the giant snakes' heads were effortlessly severed, all three at once. The Konoha shinobi who had been struggling in battle were momentarily stunned, unsure what had just happened. Natsuki appeared next to Raid, grinning. "Yo! Raid senpai, is everyone okay? Good news, the reinforcements are here. Bad news, there's only one of me." Raid was overjoyed. "So it was you, Natsuki. That disc just now was your technique, right?" As expected of Konoha's demon blade. Natsuki felt a little speechless at the nickname but quickly said. "Genma-senpai will be arriving soon with a squad for support, so don't worry. I'll go help elsewhere. Raid-senpai, stay safe." With that, he vanished again. "Oh. You be careful too." Raid looked at Natsuki's departing figure, then at the headless giant snake, and couldn't help but smile. It seemed that Konoha was about to produce another super genius like the fourth Hokage. He and Genma had once served as the fourth's guards and had passed on the Hirei Shin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, to Natsuki. Perhaps Natsuki would truly master it one day. And when that time came, the name of Konoha's yellow flash would once again resound across the ninja world. Swish! 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 Natsuki moved swiftly, arriving at another battlefield in less than a minute. Seeing Konoha shinobi struggling against several sound shinobi, he immediately intervened. Drawing his Meijin Senjin, Demon Blade, Thousand Blades, he decapitated the enemies in the blink of an eye. The Konoha shinobi were briefly stunned, then cheered. "Is that reinforcements? Are you Konoha's Demon Blade?" Natsuki's face darkened slightly. "I'm Natsuki. Everyone, I'm off to support other areas." With that, he vanished again. The Konoha shinobi stared at his departing figure, unable to hold back their admiration. To think he's someone who can go toe-to-toe with Orochimaru, he's truly strong. And he's only 12 years old, isn't he? Afterward, Natsuki moved swiftly across the battlefield, helping to repel many enemy shinobi. He decapitated countless enemies, and his name as Konoha's Demon Blade grew even more prominent. Even Marino Ibiki, the stern captain of the torture and interrogation squad, mentioned Natsuki and smiled, giving a rare thumbs up in praise. Not long after, Genma arrived with Tenten, Shino, Neji, and Sasuke. The arrival of reinforcements greatly boosted the Konoha shinobi's morale. Even though it was only a small squad, it was enough to rally the troops. Tenten, Shino, Neji, and Sasuke fought valiantly, taking down many enemy shinobi and receiving praise from those around them. Just as Natsuki was about to engage in another fight, a giant toad descended from the sky, crushing several sand shinobi into the ground. Standing atop the toad was a white-haired old man striking what he thought was a cool pose, wearing a forehead protector with the kanji for oil. Who else could it be but Jiraiya? The gallant Jiraiya has arrived. "Everyone in Konoha, are you okay?" His entrance was flashy enough, but it seemed he was a little late. Most of the enemy shinobi had already been wiped out. Besides, there was no need to summon such a massive toad just to deal with a few sand shinobi. He'd squashed them into paste. Chapter 132. However, that was just Natsuki's own thought. Others had different ideas. The people around them were all excited, and many visibly smiled with relief. Clearly, the name of Jiraiya, one of the Sunin, carried with it a sense of power and reassurance. "It's Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya-sama is here. That's great. We're saved." The appearance of a mighty hero gave everyone a sense of having found their pillar of strength. It restored their morale and gave them hope. That was just how it worked. Jiraiya quickly scanned the situation around him and realized that the battle was pretty much over. It seemed like he had arrived a bit late, which left him feeling awkward for a moment. But his skin was thick enough. He made a big leap and landed in front of Natsuki, giving him a thumbs up. "Not bad, kid. I saw you take down quite a few tough enemy ninja. I didn't expect a Konoha genin to have such strength." Natsuki silently sheathed the Maken Senjin, Demon Blade, Thousand Blades, as if something had suddenly occurred to him. "Oh. So you're the perverted old lecher that Tenten keeps talking about, the one who peeks at women's bathhouses. So the legendary peeper is Jiraiya, one of the Sunin? How can a disciple of the Hokage do something like that? That's just wrong." Cough. 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 Jiraiya choked, trying to defend himself. "Brat, Don't talk nonsense. I'm conducting research. Research? You can go to a brothel for that, don't go harassing women's bathhouses. Do you know how many innocent women you're disturbing in there? Natsuki's tone was sharp, showing no respect for the Sunin at all. Jiraiya was left speechless. Natsuki pressed on, saying, don't bother explaining. An explanation is just an excuse, and an excuse means you're guilty. If I catch you peeping at a bathhouse again, I don't care if you're one of the Sunin or even the Hokage, I'll beat you up. As he spoke, he raised a fist, as if saying, have you ever seen a fist as big as a sandbag? The Konoha shinobi nearby couldn't help but shrug. Many of them had heard about Jiraiya's antics, and they weren't too happy about it either. But because of Jiraiya's status, no one dared to say anything. Now, hearing Natsuki speak out so boldly, directly questioning and threatening Jiraiya, who couldn't even argue back, left everyone feeling strangely satisfied. So what if you're one of the Sunin? So what if you're the Hokage's student? You think it's okay to peek at bathhouses? Everyone had female family members, just imagine their loved ones being spied on by a perverted old man. And they couldn't do anything about it. Who could be okay with that? Someone like that should be called out. At that moment, Genma arrived with the squad and quickly tried to smooth things over. Jiraiya-sama, please forgive him. Natsuki has a strong sense of justice and a deep hatred for evil. Please don't take it to heart. Jiraiya's mouth twitched. This kid has a strong sense of justice? Does that mean I am evil? This kid hates evil? Then does that make me the bad guy? Genma really didn't know how to talk. And just then, Tenten piped up. Ah! The bathhouse peeper. Little girl, don't talk nonsense. That was research. Jiraiya reflexively retorted, then realized. Oh, so it's you, little girl. And you're Natsuki, hey? I've heard you have a nickname, Konoha's Demon Blade. They say you even fought against Orochimaru. Truly, a young hero. Genma added. Jiraiya-sama, Natsuki also defeated the One-Tail just now in the arena. Nani? Defeated the One-Tail? The crowd was stunned. Seeing Genma's confident expression, they had no choice but to believe it. After all, this wasn't the kind of thing someone could make up. If it wasn't true, it would be exposed soon enough. Even Jiraiya had to take it seriously. You actually defeated a Baijiu. It seems I underestimated you. Natsuki said nothing, not because he was arrogant, but simply because he didn't know what to say. After all, he wasn't the type to brag. Thankfully, everyone assumed he was just being modest. In a world like this, people were pretty good at filling in the blanks on their own. Fortunately, everyone still remembered the main issue. Raid spoke up. Jiraiya-sama, now that you're here, please take charge of the situation. Hokage-sama is trapped inside a barrier and is currently fighting Orochimaru. We need you to give us orders. Jiraiya looked toward the arena, his expression turning serious. The ANBU are with the Hokage. For now, focus on rescuing the villagers. If there are any remaining enemy shinobi, capture them immediately. Also, continue to guard the village's defensive lines, don't let any other forces invade. Yes. The shinobi immediately sprang into action. Natsuki was assigned to a team with Tenten and Shino, holding the line at a defensive position. Sasuke and Neji followed Genma to another location. After that, all they could do was wait for the situation to end. But Jiraiya's expression remained uneasy. He silently prayed. Old man, you'd better hold on. At the arena, Megumi and Sakura's treatment efforts were very timely. Most of the spectators had only suffered bruises and minor burns, so after some healing, they were basically fine. The tension in the air eased. Meanwhile, Kabuto, seeing the timing was about right, quietly led the few remaining Otonin and retreated. On the rooftop, the bodies of the first and second Hokage were gone. Only the corpses of Sakon and Teiwa remained. Evidently, the two Otonin had been used by Orochimaru as sacrifices for the Edo Tensei. As for Sarutobi Hiruzen, he lay on the ground, his chest stained with blood, lifeless. The four violet flames formation disappeared as well. Orochimaru, with his arms dangling limply and a defeated look on his face, was swiftly retreating under the protection of the Sound Four. At this point, Konoha's destruction finally came to an end. 2 days later, the sky was overcast. All the shinobi and villagers silently stepped out of their homes, dressed in black. Each person went to the flower shop to pick up a single funeral flower, then quietly made their way toward the cemetery. Natsuki and Tenten were among the crowd. Rain fell steadily from the sky, but no one carried an umbrella. Everyone was immersed in grief. Well, not Natsuki. He followed the crowd to Hiruzen's grave, where he stood in silence, placed a flower, and, depending on whether he had words to say, either spoke quietly or simply bowed before leaving so as not to hold up the people behind him. Hiruzen had finally reached the end of his life as a shinobi. His rights and wrongs would be judged by others. Perhaps he had done many things worthy of criticism, but Konoha had flourished under him. Of course, Konoha had also declined under him. There were too many things unknown. But Natsuki didn't care. He had never had any expectations for Konoha's so-called elite, nor did he have any reverence or trust for Hiruzen. Now that Hiruzen was dead, a new era was about to begin. And Natsuki no longer needed to hold back, his strength was already enough. In the chaos of the recent destruction, he had stood out as a hero. No one in Konoha dared to lay a finger on him or his family anymore, and that was enough. What he needed to do now, was wait. Wait for Tsunade to return as the fifth Hokage. Then, he would be able to ask Tsunade for something, continuing his path to becoming stronger. Chapter 133. Dan spoke bluntly. Homura, Koharu, I need your support to become the fifth Hokage. But Mitokado Homura and Yuta and Koharu refused outright. Impossible. Dan's, we won't support you. Dan's single eye widened in anger, why not? If I become Hokage, your power won't be reduced in the slightest, and your clans will gain even more benefits. Under my leadership, Konoha will only grow stronger and more prosperous. Why won't you support me? Dan's, Konoha isn't ruled by just us, Homura shot back coldly. The clans, the Jainin, none of them will accept you as Hokage. Let's not even get into your reputation, which is already in tatters after everything you've done over the years. Just this last disaster when the village was under attack, you stayed inside and did nothing. Do you think everyone else is blind? How do you expect the top Jainin of the Aberame clan, or any other family, to support you? Koharu added, Dan's, give it up. You don't have Hiruzen's prestige. Your reputation is bad, and you'll never be Hokage. They knew this old friend all too well. Dan's always claimed to act for the village, but in reality, he was selfing, rarely prioritizing the village's interests over his own. When Hiruzen was alive, he could keep Dan's in check, but with Hiruzen gone, no one could hold him back. If Dan's became Hokage, wouldn't Konoha be thrown into chaos? Sure, they liked power and benefits, but the village had to be stable and peaceful for them to enjoy those benefits. If Dan's wrecked Konoha, no amount of power would matter. Dan's was furious. Who else is qualified to be Hokage besides me? I'm the only suitable candidate. But Homura and Koharu replied firmly. Of course there's someone else. Jiraiya is the perfect candidate. He has both the strength and the prestige. If he becomes Hokage, he'll have the full support of the village. You'll regret this. Dan's roared in frustration. Dan's, you're not the Hokage. And you never will be. Their words hit him harder than Hiruzen's declaration of I am the Hokage. It was a devastating blow. The next moment, the door slammed shut as Dan stormed out in a rage. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I can't believe those two old fools won't support me. I already made a deal with Orochimaru once he killed Hiruzen, I was supposed to become Hokage and rule Konoha. Why is everything going so wrong? Dan seethed with anger. But he never considered that Hiruzen wasn't the one blocking his path to the Hokage seat. It was his own past deeds, the countless evil acts, the many crimes he helped Hiruzen cover up, and the trail of hatred he left among the clans and the Jainin. No one supported him because they hated him. Even with Hiruzen gone, no one wanted to see a scumbag like Dan's take power. If they did, it would only bring disaster upon themselves. Another day later, still in the Hokage's office. A small meeting, Jiraiya, Homura, and Koharu. Homura got straight to the point. Jiraiya, the village can't go a day without a Hokage. You should become the fifth Hokage. We all hope you'll take the position. Jiraiya shook his head. No, I'm not suitable for the role. Koharu frowned. If not you, then who? Don't refuse. But Jiraiya remained firm. There's someone else more suitable than me. She's also a disciple of Hiruzen Sensei, and the granddaughter of the first and second Hokage Tsunade. Tsunade? Homura and Koharu's side. Of course she's suitable, but no one knows where she is. Jiraiya immediately said. Then I'll go find her. She must become the 5th Hokage. Only with her back in the village can we have peace. Besides, the village is critically short on top-tier strength right now. Tsunade's return will be a much-needed boost. At this, the two elders couldn't argue. After all, Jiraiya had flatly refused to become Hokage himself, and his reasoning was sound. But Jiraiya's next words made their foreheads twitch. I'm taking Naruto with me. No way. Absolutely not. How can you let the Jinchuriki leave the village? Jiraiya, this is madness. The two elders were adamantly opposed. Whoa, calm down, Jiraiya said with a grin. Just hear me out. I've received intel there's a group called Akatsuki, a rogue organization targeting the tailed beasts. I'm worried they'll go after Naruto. Right now, with the village short on top-tier strength, the safest place for Naruto is by my side. Don't underestimate Akatsuki. Uchiha Itachi is one of its members, and each of their members is incredibly powerful. At this point, Homura and Koharu could say no more. They could only urge Jiraiya to watch over the Jinchuriki carefully, and to make sure to bring Tsunade back. None of this was known to Natsuki. Currently, Natsuki wasn't idle either. After the Hokage's funeral, the higher UPS, for the sake of the village's security, stopped assigning external missions. All ninja teams were ordered to patrol within the village on a rotating schedule, in an effort to root out spies. Of course, training couldn't be neglected either. Fortunately, Yamashiro Aoba, realizing he had nothing left to teach Natsuki, simply let him train on his own. Natsuki naturally holed up at home, spending almost all his time in the gravity training room. Aside from daily gravity training, he focused on studying the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, determined to master it for combat use as soon as possible. The battle with Shukaku, while victorious, had left him feeling restricted. Mainly because there were too many civilians around, Natsuki had to worry about their lives. Even when using his big moves, he had to set up defensive barriers first, fearing the collateral damage would kill a bunch of spectators. Fortunately, Megami later reported that none of the spectators had died, only minor injuries from impacts and burns, all of which were treated. The villagers and spectators, upon learning the details, didn't blame him. Instead, they were deeply grateful. Natsuki didn't really care about their feelings. His main concern was that if too many civilians died, it might hinder his promotion. Still, the main reason he felt restricted was the lack of techniques at his disposal. If I'd been able to use Hiraishin no Jutsu proficiently back then, forget the Bijidama, I could have just teleported Shukaku straight into the forest for a fight. I could have unleashed my big moves without any worries. That's why Natsuki was determined to master the Flying Thunder God technique as quickly as possible. That afternoon, Natsuki had just finished lunch and was about to take a nap when someone knocked on the door. Opening it, he saw Sasuke. Sasuke? Do you need something? Come on in. Natsuki stepped aside. Yeah. I've got something important to discuss. Or rather, I need to ask for your guidance. Sasuke didn't hesitate and walked right in. Natsuki didn't rush. He invited Sasuke to sit and poured him some tea, casually asking. Don't you have missions to do? Sasuke shook his head. Naruto, he left the village with Jiraiya. I don't know the details. Sakura's helping out at the hospital, so Team 7 is basically disbanded. I did just finish a patrol mission. That's why I came to ask you, well, to learn from you. Please teach me how to get stronger. Chapter 134. For Sasuke to actually say the words please teach me was quite rare. After all, this guy had always been proud and had always been ranked first in his year. It wasn't in his nature to ask for help. But Natsuki wasn't surprised. Sasuke, in order to take revenge, would do anything to become stronger. In the original story, he had even gone as far as turning to Orochimaru, completely disregarding any sense of camaraderie or bonds. Now, although he still had the cursed seal placed on him, he hadn't yet fallen to the dark side. After seeing Natsuki's impressive display of power, it was only natural that he would seek guidance. Natsuki didn't make things difficult for him and smiled. What do you want to ask? Just say it. We're friends, no need to stand on ceremony. Sasuke's eyes gleamed with intensity. I want to know, how do you train? How did you get so strong? What was the technique you used to defeat the Baijiu? And, Do you have any advice for me? A flurry of questions came tumbling out. He was clearly desperate. Natsuki nodded. My path to becoming stronger isn't really a secret. I don't mind sharing it with you. But everyone's situation is different, and the methods that worked for me may not work for you. That's why I'm more inclined to give you advice rather than a specific roadmap. You've seen how strong Tenten has become, haven't you? Her progress is the result of following my suggestions. Sasuke nodded earnestly. Tenton really is strong. That much is undeniable. Good, I'm glad you acknowledge that. Natsuki pulled out some snacks and started munching while talking. When I was courting Tenton, I gave her this piece of advice. I told her she needed to identify her strengths and weaknesses, then enhance her strengths while overcoming her weaknesses. That's the key to true strength. Tenton's strengths are her Kukiyos no Jutsu, summoning technique, her skill with ninja tools, and, well, being rich. She's now mastered her summoning techniques, has incredible proficiency with ninja tools, and her arsenal of special tools keeps growing because she can afford them. See? That's the result of developing her strengths. You need to figure out your own strengths and weaknesses too. It made perfect sense. That was the core principle. Sasuke, of course, understood that Natsuki's reasoning was sound. Tenten was living proof, and Sasuke had seen it firsthand, so he accepted it wholeheartedly. Kakashi had also given Sasuke plenty of guidance before, but it was mostly just techniques and methods. Sasuke had followed along, learning whatever Kakashi taught, chasing after any chance to get stronger. But he had never grasped such simple yet profound principles. Now, with Natsuki's explanation, Sasuke finally felt like the fog had lifted, as if he had found a direction for growth. Then, Natsuki, what do you think are my strengths and weaknesses? Sasuke seemed reluctant to think about it himself and wanted a direct answer. Your strengths and weaknesses, hey. Let me think. Natsuki picked up a pen and paper, jotting things down as he spoke. From what I know about you, your main weaknesses are twofold: 1, your unstable mental state, and 2, your lack of chakra. Or to put it more accurately, you don't have enough chakra to reach higher levels of strength. The chakra deficiency, that much he could accept. But an unstable mental state? Was that really a problem for him? Natsuki pointed at Sasuke. Don't doubt it. Your mental state really is unstable. Think back to when we fought at the academy. Remember when I hit you with a basic genjutsu, the Naruto Gensei no Jutsu, hell viewing technique? You're an Uchiha with the Sharingan. Even if you hadn't awakened it yet, you shouldn't have been caught so easily by a genjutsu, right? I think the trauma you experienced during the Uchiha massacre left a huge mark on you. That's why your mental state is so unstable. Natsuki's voice was calm. Don't underestimate this. Chakra is the mixture of mental and physical energy. If your mental state is unstable, it affects your chakra growth and control. Remember when you were learning to tree climb? With your talent, that should have been easy, but you struggled for a long time. Right. Sasuke's mouth opened slightly, and his mind flashed back to the memory of himself constantly falling while trying to climb trees. That scene came rushing back, and he suddenly understood. So his talent wasn't the problem, it was his unstable mental state that had affected his chakra control, making him struggle even with tree climbing. As for the night of the Uchiha massacre, he had suffered an overwhelming trauma. He had witnessed the entire clan being slaughtered, watched his parents die at the hands of his own brother, and was tormented for days by his brother's genjutsu. It was no wonder his mental state was so unstable. No wonder Natsuki was so strong, he was so smart. Sasuke felt like he should have come to him for guidance a long time ago. He nodded vigorously, his eyes blazing with anticipation as he waited for Natsuki's next words. Natsuki continued. An unstable mental state has more consequences than just chakra control. It affects your sleep quality, your appetite, and ultimately your physical growth during these critical years. Poor health means less chakra, which affects your progress. Most importantly, it affects your intelligence and critical thinking ability. Have you ever found yourself getting irritable for no reason? Have you ever sat down to reflect on yourself calmly? Have you ever, after learning something new, become arrogant? All of that comes from long-term mental instability. Sasuke nodded furiously. Keep going. You're making so much sense. Natsuki paused for a moment, feeling like Sasuke's tone was a bit perfunctory. If it weren't for the burning look in his eyes, he might have thought Sasuke wasn't really paying attention. So he pressed on. I don't know the full truth behind the Uchiha massacre, but I've heard that your goal is to kill Uchiha Itachi. His Sharingan genjutsu is incredibly powerful. Your first step should be to learn to stay calm, completely calm. Otherwise, the moment you face Uchiha Itachi, you won't even have a chance to speak before you're caught in his genjutsu. If that happens, you can forget about revenge, you'll probably die 100 times over. So first, address that flaw. Learn to calm yourself, stabilize your mental state, and find ways to strengthen your mind. Or better yet, find a genjutsu master and train your resistance to illusions. If you do that, your chakra should also grow naturally, your control will improve, and your learning speed for new techniques will increase. And when you face your enemy in the future, you won't be so easily caught in genjutsu. That's the benefit of overcoming your weaknesses. What do you think? Sasuke fell into deep thought. As he reflected on the past few years, the more he thought, the more he realized Natsuki was right. His mental instability really was a huge problem. He almost never slept soundly at night, often waking from nightmares. He couldn't eat properly, and that had seriously impacted his growth, his chakra development, and even his ability to learn techniques. That's why he had struggled so much with tree climbing. That's why, even after awakening the Sharingan, his progress with the White Fang's sword techniques and the Chidori had been so slow. It was all because of his unstable mental state. And the most terrifying thing was that it made him so vulnerable to genjutsu. How could he ever avenge the Uchiha clan if he kept falling into Itachi's illusions? Just like Natsuki said, he wouldn't even get a chance to speak before he was trapped in an illusion. How could he get revenge like that? Might as well just die. Chapter 135. Sasuke took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I admit this flaw. I'll find a way to overcome it. Please tell me the second flaw. Natsuki glanced at Sasuke and didn't sense any perfunctory attitude, it seemed like he had really taken the words to heart. That was good. After all, Sasuke had been traumatized from a young age, which twisted his mind. That's why he later fell into darkness for the sake of power. His mental state had never been stable, constantly thinking about revenge, and after killing Uchiha Itachi, he learned even more truths, driving him to the point of insanity. He even tried to kill Sakura and Kirin at one point. That was truly madness. Now, teaching Sasuke to stay calm and think before acting would help prevent him from going down that path again. Moreover, Sasuke's talent had indeed been affected by his mental instability. Think about it, how could someone who was constantly anxious, easily irritable, and prone to rage possibly learn properly? Natsuki wrote down the second point on the paper. As I just mentioned, your second major flaw is that your chakra isn't abundant enough. Chakra is the body's energy, and naturally, the more the better. The more you have, the stronger you'll be. To be honest, neither you nor I have more chakra than Naruto. Even though he's still a bit of an idiot right now, once the day comes when he fully masters that power, he might end up surpassing both of us. You've probably noticed that already, right? Naruto, hey. Yet. Sasuke recalled, Naruto can summon hundreds of shadow clones at once. That level of chakra far surpasses mine. And as he keeps fighting, his growth rate is astonishing. So, how can I make my chakra increase explosively? Natsuki shrugged, if you want normal chakra growth, just keep training your body. Once your mind stabilizes, your chakra will naturally increase. But if you want to reach Naruto's level, honestly, it's nearly impossible. The Uzumaki clan has always been known for their immense chakra reserves. It's a bloodline thing, just like how your Uchiha clan has the Sharingan. Uzumaki clan? Why had he never heard of them before? If they had so much chakra, they should have produced plenty of strong shinobi and been famous, right? It's normal you haven't heard of them. The Uzumaki clan were residents of Ozushiagakur, but that village was destroyed. The survivors of the clan scattered across the world. Naruto's mother came to the Hidden Leaf. You probably know Naruto's the host of the Fox Demon. There are too many taboos involved, things we can't discuss. Natsuki's tone grew more cautious. Even though Hiruzen had died, some topics were still best left unspoken. Matters concerning the Jinchuriki were sensitive. The village higher ups treated them as taboo subjects, including Naruto's parents. But Sasuke, deep in thought, suddenly said, Natsuki, if I became a Jinchuriki, would my chakra explode in size? Yaar. You're starting to think now, Sasuke. Natsuki was surprised. How did you come up with that? Come on, Tell me. He was genuinely shocked. He never thought Sasuke would actually think about becoming a Jinchuriki. It was a crazy idea but not impossible. After all, a Jinchuriki could draw chakra from the tailed beast, solving their chakra issues. And if someone could become a perfect Jinchuriki, they'd instantly reach Kage level strength more than enough to fight Uchiha Itachi. Most importantly, the Akatsuki was about to start hunting Jinchuriki, and Itachi was assigned to the Leaf's side. If Sasuke became a Jinchuriki, he'd gain the strength he desired, and Itachi would come after him to capture the tailed beast. Wouldn't that align all the elements perfectly? Could it be that Sasuke was a genius for thinking of such a brilliant plan? It was just, if Sasuke really succeeded, what would Itachi's expression be like when he heard the news? Would he go berserk? After all, the weasel was a true brother complex. He would never just stand by and watch his little brother get the tailed beast ripped out and die. Would he betray the Akatsuki outright? This was getting more and more interesting. Of course, Natsuki was just a spectator in all this. He wasn't interfering. He had only offered Sasuke some advice. The idea to become a Jinchuriki? That was Sasuke's own inspiration, nothing to do with Natsuki. Sasuke looked a bit embarrassed. Didn't you mention Naruto just now? He's a Jinchuriki, isn't he? I've seen him lose control with the tailed beast's chakra. His chakra was truly overwhelming. And during the exam, I also saw Gaara wielding the tailed beast's power. It was incredibly strong. That's what made me think of it. Not bad, not bad. Sasuke really had learned to think. And this idea was quite nice. Many transmigrators who arrived in this world would solve their chakra shortages by becoming a Jinchuriki, right? The Jinchuriki route was the easy mode. Natsuki gave him a thumbs up. This idea is very good. See? After calming down and thinking things through, you've already come up with a good solution, haven't you? Sasuke nodded. I think so too. But, how do I go about it? Well, that's going to be tricky. Natsuki analyzed, there are 9 tailed beasts in total, and most of them have been captured by the major villages. However, sometimes when a Jinchuriki dies, the tailed beast is reborn and left unsealed. You'll first need to find a tailed beast that's on its own. Then, you have to either master powerful finjutsu or find a skilled sealing master to help you. Only sealing techniques can bind a tailed beast into your body. And finally, there's a big risk. Tailed beasts are extremely strong. You'd have to defeat the beast first. Even after sealing it, the process wouldn't necessarily be stable. Look at Naruto, he has outbursts. Gaara also had mental instability issues. These are all factors you must consider. Sasuke listened and nodded repeatedly, even subconsciously taking Natsuki's pen and jotting down notes. Right now, he admired Natsuki a lot. Natsuki's clear thinking, his ability to analyze problems so thoroughly, it all made him seem incredibly trustworthy. Moreover, Natsuki knew a lot. It felt like no matter what you talked about, he could always provide information that others didn't know. It was quite the pleasant surprise. After finishing his notes, Sasuke actually smiled a little. Thanks, Natsuki. I'll be careful with the idea of becoming a Jinchuriki. Next, let's talk about my strengths. How should I make the most of them? Natsuki was a bit speechless at that. Seriously, man? I just praised you for learning how to think, and now you're asking for the answer? Use your brain to figure it out, for crying out loud. Natsuki sighed and said, your strengths aren't that many. Basically, it's your Sharingan and your talent in Katan, fire release, and Raiden, lightning release. The development of your Sharingan is very important. You should ask Kakashi Senpai for advice, he knows the most about it. As for your Katan and Raiden talents, the Uchiha clan has always excelled in Katan. Go look for the training notes left by your ancestors and study them well. For Raiden, I think you should continue practicing the Chidori and Hotaki sword style. Once you build on that, you can develop your own techniques. When the time comes, your strength should at least be at the elite Jonin level. Chapter 136. After analyzing Sasuke's strengths and weaknesses, Natsuki generously shared his own training experiences. How to train the body, how to improve chakra control. But Sasuke's abilities were still far too lacking. He wasn't yet capable of things like doing a handstand while lifting a giant boulder or walking along a cliff while carrying heavy weights using chakra. Natsuki didn't recommend trying to imitate those feats. Instead, he advised Sasuke to develop a training plan tailored to his own situation. Additionally, there were other ways to get stronger. Training, learning, borrowing, and imagination. Natsuki outlined 4 points. Training is self-explanatory. It strengthens the body, naturally improving taijutsu and increasing chakra reserves. Learning makes your mind more agile, helps you think better, and lays the foundation for imagination. Borrowing means learning from the powerful techniques of our predecessors. Imagination is essential for creating your own unique techniques. Sasuke scribbled down notes, fully in student mode, which made Natsuki want to laugh. Ahem, let me focus on the last 2 points. First, borrowing, the Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates released formation, Hatake sword style. These are techniques I learned from my seniors. That's borrowing. The reason I took the initiative to learn these things is because I understood the strength of those who came before us. I knew how Might Guy's father kicked 4 Kirigaku elite Genin to death with a single blow. I knew how Kakashi's father became a legend rivaling the Sunin. That's why I worked hard to find these techniques and learn them. Even if it meant thickening my skin and begging, I would still do it, because they make me stronger. Even if you can't learn directly, you can still deeply study the techniques of the powerful from the past. Even just knowing the names of their techniques, or getting some descriptions, you can use that as reference to develop your own moves. That's how you borrow their experience to become stronger. Sasuke, have you ever heard of Uchiha Shisui? Sasuke, who had been furiously taking notes, paused in surprise, taking a moment to respond. Why bring up Shisui all of a sudden? Shisui Naizen? Of course I know him. Sasuke fell into memories. He remembered that the intensifying conflicts within the clan seemed to have started with Shisui's death. Back then, Itachi was extremely agitated, even beating up fellow clan members while denying he had killed Shisui. And after that, the Uchiha massacre happened. Sasuke quickly shook his head to push those thoughts away, afraid he might lose his composure again. Natsuki said, Uchiha Shisui had a famous nickname, Shunshin no Shisui, Shisui of the body flicker. That means his Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, was exceptionally skilled, striking fear into people's hearts. It's said he combined Genjutsu and Shunshin no Jutsu, creating multiple illusionary clones during his attacks. But those clones could suddenly turn into the real body, making it impossible to defend or attack properly. It was terrifying. Sasuke took a sharp breath. TCH. Shisui Naizen was that strong. See? You've been burying your head in training, waiting for others to teach you, but you don't even understand the strength of your own clan's elite. How can that work? Natsuki chuckled. You need to learn more about the strength of those who came before us. Their techniques are precious experience. Compared to blindly fumbling around or just training without direction, borrowing from their experience is far more important. After hearing about Shunshin no Shisui's technique, can you imagine how to learn from it? That's a powerful move that can only be fully used with the Sharingan. Don't believe me? Go ask Kakashi Senpai, he definitely knows Shisui. See? That's borrowing right there. Sasuke nodded earnestly. You're right, why didn't I think of that? Because you were too young, and no one taught you. And because your heart was clouded by hatred, all you knew was to throw yourself into training. Your mind wasn't stable enough to think that far ahead. You don't even know how much of the Uchiha clan's inheritance has been lost. Let alone money and property. Have you even obtained half of the clan's most precious ninjutsu scrolls? Natsuki couldn't be bothered to complain further. The Uchiha clan had been wiped out for years. Talking about this now was meaningless. He moved on to the last point. Finally, imagination. It's about using the foundation of the first 3 points to create your own powerful techniques. For example, when I fought the tailed beast, I used moves like Sui Enzan, Water Circular Slash, and Uzumaki Fuden, Vortex Boiling Bullet. Those are my own creations. As Natsuki spoke, he even raised his hand to demonstrate. Sasuke watched, swallowing hard. He could clearly see how powerful those moves were. He really wanted to learn them, but he knew better than to ask. Natsuki grinned. You want to learn them, right? I know. But your chakra doesn't have a water affinity, so you can't. Actually, these techniques combine chakra nature transformation and shape transformation. That's something only a Genin can achieve. Oh, your Chidori also falls into this category. But it's not your original technique. You still need to form hand seals to use it. That's far from enough. Sasuke sat up straighter. What should I do? Chakra shape transformation is simple. You control chakra into the shape you want, and it has to be stable enough. For example, chakra threads. If you want power, the shape of Sui Enzan is based on a high-speed rotating cutting disc. After that, imagine integrating chakra nature into it. This also needs training. For example, water nature try to make your chakra soak a piece of paper without using hand seals. In fact, using hand seals to release jutsu is also a process of chakra nature transformation, it's just guided by the hand seals. But you need to learn to do it without them. Here, try this, use your chakra to burn this piece of paper. Imagine it. He handed Sasuke a piece of tissue paper. Sasuke took it, placed it in his palm, closed his eyes to concentrate, and after a long while, opened his eyes to find that the tissue only had a tiny spark. This is so hard. Sasuke stared at the spark, deep in thought. Exactly because it's hard, learning it makes you strong. Natsuki smiled. Your mind isn't stable enough yet. Focus on calming down first. Later, go find Kakashi senpai, he knows more about this than I do. He should have some specific training methods for you. Just go to him. Sasuke nodded, feeling like he had learned almost everything he wanted to know. He didn't stay any longer and got up to leave. As he stepped out of the courtyard, he suddenly paused, turned to Natsuki, and gave him a deep bow. Natsuki, thank you really. Amazement. The second MC, Sasuke, had actually expressed sincere gratitude. Natsuki's effort hadn't been in vain. He waved his hand with a smile. All right, off you go. You've got a lot on your plate. Here's a piece of advice for you: eat well, sleep well, study well, and train well. This was said by a sage who once trained an invincible warrior. It's worth reflecting on. Kame Sennin, Master Roshi, said that, and he trained Son Goku into an invincible powerhouse. Can't argue with that. Eat well, sleep well, study well, train well. Got it. I'll remember that. Sasuke seemed to grasp something, showing a rare smile. To him, it was clear this phrase was a summary of everything Natsuki had just said. The so-called sage's words were actually Natsuki's best advice for a friend. Chapter 137. After watching Sasuke leave, Natsuki stretched his body lazily. He hadn't expected Sasuke to come seeking guidance, let alone with such a sincere attitude. Naturally, Natsuki wasn't stingy with his advice. Although he had no intention of meddling in the fate of the savior, Sasuke was a friend. Since Sasuke had taken the initiative to ask for help, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. That would be too heartless. Besides, if his words could truly help Sasuke, maybe that was a good thing. Sasuke's early life had been far too bitter. If he could avoid going dark, that would be best. Going to Orochimaru wasn't a good option. Better for Sasuke to stay in Konoha, at least where he had friends and comrades, so he wouldn't be alone. As long as he understood how to get stronger, Orochimaru's power would lose its appeal. As for the truth behind the Uchiha clan massacre, well, that involved the F4. Or rather, Danzo would end up being the scapegoat. That didn't matter much. With Danzo's ambitions, he was bound to stir up trouble before the final act, and he'd inevitably get killed off eventually. Ideally, Homura Mitokado and Kohara Udaten would die too. Konoha didn't need those old vampires sucking the village dry any longer. It would be best if Sasuke understood that the Uchiha clan's massacre was orchestrated by the F4 and had little to do with Konoha itself. Let him take his revenge on those four geezers, but don't destroy the entire village. After all, Konoha had quite a few assets belonging to Tenton's family. If the village was destroyed, wouldn't Natsuki suffer a massive loss? Yawning, Natsuki thought about how he hadn't taken a nap that day. He was feeling a bit lazy. Seeing that it was getting late, maybe it was time to buy groceries. He hadn't cooked in a while today, he'd make an exception. Grabbing a shopping basket, he headed out. Meanwhile, Sasuke was looking at the paper in his hands. It listed his strengths and weaknesses, Natsuki's training tips, and important advice. The more Sasuke read, the more it all made sense. Looks like I've been blindly training all this time, no wonder my progress has been so slow. Compared to Natsuki, he's so much smarter. He knows exactly how to get stronger quickly. He was already pursuing Tenten when he was only 6, right? That means he started thinking about how to grow stronger at 6. Now he's 12, that's 6 years of dedicated effort, while I was just learning basic school stuff. Of course he's stronger than me. Thinking this, Sasuke carefully tucked the paper away. The contents were too important to him. He needed to reflect and plan carefully. He couldn't just muddle through like before. Right, I should go find Kakashi while there's still time. With that thought, Sasuke headed off to places where Kakashi was known to hang out, like the training grounds, Ichiraku Ramen, or the Dango shop. But as soon as he got near the Dango shop, he saw Kakashi, Kurane, and Asuma racing across the rooftops. 3 Jonin rushing like that. Something serious had to have happened. Sasuke's instincts told him this was big, so he immediately gave chase, but he didn't call out to Kakashi. He knew that if it was a major issue, Kakashi wouldn't let him get involved, so he just followed quietly from a distance. What he didn't notice was that Natsuki, who had gone out shopping, also saw this scene. Not long after, Kakashi, Kurane, and Asuma arrived at a riverbank outside the village. Kurane and Asuma were the first to leap out, blocking 2 figures wearing straw hats and black cloaks adorned with red clouds, the Akatsuki. They were here to capture the Kaibi-Jinkraki. Uchiha Itachi. Hoshigaki Kisame. The battle broke out immediately. Asuma faced off against Kisame but was wounded by same Hata. Kurane tried to trap Itachi with Genjutsu, but it was easily deflected, leaving her injured as well. Kisame swiftly formed hand seals, summoning a water dragon that surged toward Asuma and Kurane. But suddenly, another water dragon rose up to block the first one. Suten, Suiridan no Jutsu. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Suten, Suiridan no Jutsu. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. It was Kakashi. He had copied Kisame's water jutsu. Itachi's voice was cold and emotionless. Long time no see, Kakashi-san. Tell me, where is the Kaibi-Jinkraki? Kakashi's expression darkened. Uchiha Itachi. Your target is Naruto. Sasuke, who had just arrived, heard these words clearly. Seeing his long-lost nemesis, the man who slaughtered his clan, his mind was instantly consumed by hatred. But somewhere deep inside, a thought flickered to life, keeping his mind barely clear. Naruto? Their target was Naruto? No. He had asked for the Kaibi-Jinkraki. Their target was the tailed beast. So if he became a Jinkraki, he wouldn't just gain immense power, Itachi would also come looking for him. This thought flashed through his mind, but it was quickly drowned out by hatred. His expression twisted, and he drew his short sword, charging forward. Uchiha Itachi. Go to hell! But just as he roared, the world around him suddenly spun, disorienting him. He instantly realized he had been caught in Itachi's genjutsu in an instant. And it wasn't even a high-level genjutsu. As Natsuki had said, his unstable mind couldn't even resist a basic genjutsu. Calm down. Calm down. Keep your head cool. Yes, that's it. Sasuke took a deep breath and stabbed the blade into his own hand, using the pain to snap himself out of it. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the others had already moved onto the river's surface, locked in a tense standoff. Clearly, while he was trapped in the illusion, a fierce battle had erupted. The river's surface was churning violently. And Kakashi? Kakashi looked bad, kneeling on the water, clearly in great pain. Asuma, Kurane, close your eyes. Don't look at him. His genjutsu is too dangerous. Kakashi gasped for air. He had just endured 3 days and nights of torture in Itachi's Tsukuyomi. Kakashi, are you alright? Asuma and Kurane quickly closed their eyes, worried about Kakashi's condition. Kakashi's inner thought, I'm fine. I can handle another 3 days and nights, no problem. Fine my ass. Just don't open your eyes. Kakashi gritted his teeth. Then he glanced at Sasuke, who had snapped out of it. Sasuke, calm down. Be careful of his genjutsu. Sasuke nodded slowly, not daring to look directly into Itachi's eyes. He knew that if he did, he'd be trapped again, with no chance to fight back, no chance for revenge. His heart was full of hatred, but he wasn't an idiot. Still, if he couldn't open his eyes, couldn't look at his opponent, how was he supposed to fight? Just as the situation reached a stalemate, a figure flashed between the two sides. Kakashi-senpai, Sasuke, are you guys alright? Kakashi's eyes lit up. Natsuki. Why are you here? Sasuke also instinctively relaxed. Maybe it was knowing Natsuki's strength, maybe it was his trust in him, but when Natsuki appeared, Sasuke couldn't help but feel a sense of reassurance. Chapter 138. Oh, I saw you guys rushing like crazy when I went out to buy groceries, figured something must have happened, so I followed. As Natsuki spoke, he took out several sunglasses and handed them to Kakashi. "Here, senpai, distribute these to everyone. As long as you wear them, it'll be harder for the enemy to sense our line of sight, which makes it less likely for us to fall into their genjutsu." "Wait, that works too?" Everyone was stunned for a moment, but after thinking it through, it did make sense. Sunglasses were dark enough that detecting eye contact would be tricky. While there was still a chance of getting caught in a genjutsu, the risk was significantly reduced. Kakashi and Sasuke even thought, "We used to think Natsuki wore sunglasses just to imitate Yamashiro Aoba and look cool, turns out there's more to it." Kisame bared his sharp teeth in a grin. "Oi, Itachi-san, this brat's pretty clever, hey." Itachi remained silent, but his gaze lingered on Sasuke. It had been years since they last met, and seeing his younger brother's growth brought a hint of satisfaction to his heart. But, in this cruel world, that wasn't nearly enough. After everyone had put on their sunglasses, Natsuki spoke again. "I'll take care of the fish man. You guys handle the other one. When I make my move, don't hesitate, strike immediately." The others didn't fully understand what Natsuki meant, but out of trust, they nodded. Natsuki took a horse stance on the water's surface, placing his hands in a sword finger gesture against his temples. It was clearly a technique none of them recognized. The next moment, a dazzling flash erupted from his body. Teiken, solar flare. Buzz. The Teiken made its debut in the ninja world. Because Itachi and Kisame had been staring at Natsuki, they were immediately blinded by the sudden burst of light. Their eyes instinctively shut, vision filled with blinding white spots. Both their hearts sank. "Crap! Our vision!" Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates released formation. 6th gate, Kamen, view gate, open. Without hesitation, Natsuki unleashed the 6th gate and flashed toward Kisame. Kisame reflexively raised same hata to block, but Natsuki was too fast. He had already zipped behind Kisame and sent a powerful kick that launched the shark man into the sky. The moment Natsuki opened the 8 gates, Sasuke, Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurane immediately understood the plan. No wonder Natsuki told them not to hesitate when he moved. He had used a blinding flash to rob the enemy of their vision. And with their sunglasses, they were minimally affected. Wasn't this the perfect moment to attack? In an instant, the 4 charged at Itachi. Sasuke was the fastest, his short sword crackling with lightning as he lunged straight for Itachi's neck. Seeing the blade about to sever his enemy's head, he felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. His heart raced with the thrill of imminent vengeance. But the next second, a sharp clang rang out. The short sword was blocked by something red. Looking closely, it was a skeletal armor formed from red chakra. What is this? What kind of ability is that? Sasuke's mind was reeling. Not only had his attack failed, but Kakashi's kunao and Asuma's chakra blades had no effect either. Meanwhile, back in the sky, Natsuki, after knocking Kisame into the air, surged up again. Morning Peacock, Asa Kyojaku. A barrage of blazing fists erupted midair, each strike blooming with sparks like fireworks. Kisame was left scorched, crashing back down into the water, smoke rising from his body. One down. Natsuki descended, unfazed by the result. After all, Kisame was supposed to get wrecked by Guy's 6th gate Morning Peacock. He had simply swapped in. With his current physical strength, Natsuki wasn't inferior to Guy at all. Itachi, hearing the sounds of battle, knew something was wrong. His vision was still hazy, struggling to recover. "Are you okay, Kisame?" But there was no reply. That silence told Itachi all he needed to know: his partner was down. For a brief moment, he couldn't help but feel surprised. He hadn't expected Natsuki, someone roughly Sasuke's age, to possess such strength, defeating Kisame in a single exchange. Looks like his time away from Konoha had left him out of touch with the village's situation. But while he was momentarily distracted, Natsuki had already surged forward again, unleashing a ferocious kick that slammed into the skeletal frame of the Susanoo. Crack! Crack! A network of fractures spread across the Susanoo's bone armor, then boom! A chunk of it shattered. Sasuke seized the moment, dashing in with his short sword aimed at Itachi's arm. Squelch! Blood spurted. But when Sasuke landed, he felt frustrated. Itachi, reacting on instinct, had managed to dodge slightly, and Sasuke's blade had only grazed his arm, barely a scratch. He had placed all his hopes on Natsuki breaking through the skeletal armor, and just as he expected, it shattered. He had grasped the perfect opportunity. But he was still too slow. Damn it! If I had been just a bit faster, I could have taken his arm. The Susanoo didn't care about Sasuke's complaints. The skeletal arm swung down, forcing both Sasuke and Natsuki to dodge together. Just as Natsuki prepared to follow up with another kick, a sudden movement nearby caught his attention. Kisame had recovered. Judging by the shark man's appearance, it seemed Same Hata had autonomously merged with him, reviving him. Kisame quickly formed hand seals, moving at a decent speed, then opened his mouth and released a massive surge of water. Suten, Dakedan no Jutsu. Water release, Great Shark Bullet Technique. Boom! A torrent of water engulfed the area. Natsuki and the others could only brace themselves for defense. By the time the flood receded and they looked up, Itachi and Kisame were gone. Sasuke clenched his fists in frustration. Damn it! They got away. But instead of flying into a blind rage, he took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down and think rationally. This reaction surprised even Kakashi. And more than that, he felt a sense of relief. Sasuke was growing up. Natsuki deactivated the 8 gates, turned to Kakashi, and asked, "So, what's the plan now? If there's nothing else, I'll head home and cook, my girlfriend's waiting." This guy, even now, he couldn't resist flexing his relationship status. Sasuke, however, spoke up. "Uchiha Itachi and that fishman, weren't they after Naruto? Even though Jiraiya-sama is with Naruto, isn't it a bit risky? Shouldn't we send someone to support them?" Kakashi nodded in agreement. "You're right. We should send someone. Natsuki, you go." "Hey? Kakashi-senpai, I need to get home to cook for my girlfriend, you know? You're single, cough cough, I mean, you're stronger and a Jainin. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to go?" Asuma and Kurane couldn't help but snicker. Natsuki's blunt remark about Kakashi being single just felt so amusingly brutal. Kakashi's dead fish eyes rolled. "Itachi obviously used genjutsu on you just now, yet you weren't affected at all. That means your resistance to genjutsu is high. Plus, you just beat Kisame. With your strength, you're the best choice to provide support. Stop throwing a tantrum, just go." Natsuki sighed. "Kakashi-senpai, have you awakened the Byakugan or something?" Chapter 139. In Natsuki's view, Kakashi was doing this on purpose. Clearly, after hearing him say he had to go home and cook for his girlfriend, Kakashi's jealousy kicked in, so he deliberately assigned him a mission. At a time like this, shouldn't a single guy volunteer for the mission? After all, a single guy goes home to a cold, empty house might as well take the mission and let others go home to their partners, right? Wouldn't that be the decent, selfless thing to do? Of course, when Natsuki had handed out the sunglasses earlier, Uchiha Itachi had indeed tried to cast genjutsu on him. The reason it didn't work was probably due to his system. After all his study of ninjutsu, Natsuki had long realized that he seemed to be immune to genjutsu. It was likely because the gravity training room existed inside his mind. Genjutsu couldn't shake the mental space of the gravity lab. In other words, Natsuki was a bug. Forget Uchiha Itachi's Tsukuyomi, even the infinite Tsukuyomi probably wouldn't affect him. But there was no way he could tell others that. It was better to let them think he just had a high resistance to genjutsu. That said, it really did mean he had to take on this mission, since he was clearly the most suitable person to deal with Uchiha Itachi. Didn't they all see Kakashi get tortured by Itachi's genjutsu for 3 days and 3 nights? Asuma and Kurane had no choice but to close their eyes. Only Natsuki had been completely fine. And with Natsuki's current strength, he had the recognition of the other Jainin. Even if he was technically just a genin, sending him out on a solo mission wasn't really a problem. Thankfully, Guy showed up at that moment, so the final decision was for Natsuki and Guy to go together. Natsuki couldn't object, so he asked Kakashi to pass a message to Tenton. He didn't know how many days he'd be away, so he didn't want her to worry. "Well then, we'll be off." Just as Natsuki and Guy were about to leave, Sasuke suddenly called out. "Natsuki, wait!" "Hey!" Sasuke spoke up, "That solar flare technique you used earlier, how did you do it?" Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurane were also curious. After all, being able to make your body emit a blinding flash of light was an incredibly useful ability, able to create a huge advantage in battle. Just look at how close Kisame came to being beaten to death, and even Uchiha Itachi had been caught off guard. Natsuki grinned. It's not exactly a secret. Sasuke, you need to think for yourself. For example, in Doton, Earth Release, there's the hardening technique, right? That's when you channel chakra to absorb the properties of rock into your body to make it tougher. Well, I had a flash grenade on me. Get it now? Sasuke's eyes widened in realization. So you absorbed the properties of the flash grenade into your body, and then released it yourself. Exactly. Well, I'm off. Natsuki nodded to everyone, then left with Guy. Sasuke fell into deep thought. He realized he really wasn't very good at thinking things through. The solar flare was such a simple concept, yet he hadn't even considered it. He really was too dim. But thinking about it, maybe it wasn't just that he was slow. Natsuki was just too clever. After all, the hardening technique wasn't rare. Plenty of Earth Release users knew it. But until now, only Natsuki had thought of absorbing the properties of a flash grenade to create the solar flare. Perhaps most people simply didn't have that kind of flexible thinking. Training, learning, borrowing, imagination. The solar flare is the result of learning and imagination. Natsuki's advice really wasn't wrong. Sasuke silently engraved these words in his heart. They were the guiding lights on his path to becoming stronger. Kakashi and the others also praised Natsuki's ingenious idea, and after that, Asuma and Kurane took their leave. They walked away side by side, shoulders nearly touching, creating an ambiguous atmosphere. Kakashi couldn't help but feel a bit envious. Still, his main focus was on his student's current state. He couldn't help but ask, Sasuke, you didn't think about going with Natsuki to chase after them? Sasuke froze for a moment, clenched his fists tightly, then took a deep breath and shook his head. Going now would be meaningless. Natsuki told me I need to stay calm. This is the result of my calm thinking. I need to get stronger first, then I'll go after that guy. I see. That's good, actually. Kakashi let out a deep breath of relief, genuinely happy for his student's growth. He had been really worried that Sasuke would recklessly chase after Itachi no matter what. But now, Sasuke had managed to restrain himself. He had learned to stay calm. And that was all thanks to Natsuki. Looks like you've learned quite a bit from Natsuki. Kakashi's eyes curved into a rare smile. Yeah. I asked Natsuki for advice, and he taught me a lot of useful things. Sasuke admitted it honestly, then quickly changed the subject. Kakashi, sensei, please teach me how to combine chakra nature transformation and shape transformation like the moves Natsuki used when he fought the tailed beast. I want to create my own original techniques too. Kakashi was taken aback, but his expression soon turned serious as he nodded. Alright. Since you've already learned Chidori, it's time to move on to this stage. But I'm warning you, this kind of training is going to be tough. Are you ready for that? Sasuke's eyes lit up. Of course I'm ready. Natsuki said that because it's hard, mastering it makes you stronger. Good. Very good attitude. In that case, I'll draw up a training plan for you today. Come find me at the training grounds tomorrow. We'll officially begin. Yes, Kakashi, sensei. Meanwhile, Natsuki and Guy were speeding down the road. Along the way, Natsuki recounted the details of the battle with Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, sharing intel with Guy so he wouldn't be caught off guard if they ran into trouble. The two also discussed some tactics, and their pace didn't slow down one bit. Fortunately, Jiraiya and Naruto hadn't been subtle about their whereabouts, so tracking them wasn't too difficult. Before long, they locked onto a small town. Outside that town, Naruto was training by himself, looking quite excited. Jiraiya the pervy sage had claimed he needed to gather intel and had gone off womanizing somewhere, even lightening Naruto's frog-shaped wallet a little in the process. But Naruto didn't mind at the moment. Because the pervy sage had taught him how to train the Raise Nan. Back at the exam venue, Naruto had seen Natsuki's big move, which seemed to be the Raise Nan, though maybe not quite the same. Regardless, the swirling chakra ball was clearly powerful, definitely worth learning. However, after a short while of training, Naruto started feeling frustrated. His noisy, hyperactive nature made training alone feel lonely and boring. He couldn't muster much enthusiasm. He still wished someone would keep him company. But this was clearly a test. Jiraiya wasn't going to hold his hand. If he couldn't even endure the solitude of training alone, becoming stronger would be nothing more than a pipe dream. Naruto was dumb, sure, but he more or less understood that much. So for the sake of getting stronger, he could only grit his teeth and keep training, hoping to impress the pervy sage soon. But that day, outside the town, he encountered two strange figures. Wearing straw hats, black cloaks, and red clouds. Chapter 140. Itachi-san, is this little blonde brat the Kaibi Jinkraki? Kisame hefted his bandaged samehata, grinning menacingly. Yes. I didn't expect him to be alone here. I was originally wondering how to lure Jiraiya away, but this makes it easy. Let's just take him. Itachi's voice was calm, devoid of any emotion. Naruto's pupils shrank instinctively. Nani? Who were these two? That shark-faced guy knew he was a Jinkraki? And that other guy, Itachi, why did he feel so familiar? Could it be Sasuke? But they weren't going to give Naruto time to figure things out. Kisame reached out to grab him. Naruto reflexively used the Toge Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone technique, but Kisame simply swept samehata in a wide arc, instantly dispersing the clones. He then punched Naruto square in the stomach, nearly knocking him out from the pain. Naruto desperately wanted to resist, but clearly, he wasn't strong enough. He didn't even have time to call for help. He had no idea if Jiraiya had noticed the enemy's arrival. Alright, the Kaibi Jinkraki is captured. Time to head BA. Konoha Daisen. Leaf Great Whirlwind. A sudden kick interrupted Kisame's words. A powerful foot shot into Kisame's field of vision and sent him flying, while also snatching Naruto away. It was hard to imagine how fast Guy had to be for Kisame to react too slowly to defend. Naruto's eyes lit up. Bushy brows sensei. You're here just in time, Date Bayo. Talk about cutting it close any later, and Naruto would have been abducted. Who knows where they would have taken him, or if they'd have just killed him on the spot. If the savior died, what would they do then? Itachi's gaze sharpened as he prepared to attack Guy, but a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, striking the Teiken, solar flare, stance. It was Natsuki. Itachi reflexively closed his eyes and activated his Susanoo skeletal armor for protection, but after a long pause, nothing happened. Cautiously, he cracked an eye open. Damn it! Natsuki wasn't even using the technique, he was just posing. Itachi couldn't help feeling annoyed. That he had been fooled by such a simple feint. Was his vision deteriorating so badly it was affecting his judgment too? Kisame, now back on his feet, sneered. What the hell is with this weird kappa? Guy casually tossed Naruto aside and gave a thumbs up, proudly introducing himself. I am the proud blue beast of Konoha, might Guy. Not some kappa. You're the real weirdo here, shark face. Shark face? Hat. I'll make you regret that. Kisame was clearly angry now. He unwrapped the bandages from samehata, revealing the strange, living blade. Natsuki quickly chimed in, Guy-sensei, that sword is called samehata. It's alive and will absorb your chakra. Be careful not to touch it directly. Got it. I'll handle shark face. Without hesitation, Guy drew his nunchaku. Since the enemy's weapon wasn't easy to deal with, he'd rely on his own best weapons. Swish. 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 Guy twirled the nunchaku masterfully, then suddenly dashed forward, launching a fierce attack. Kisame swung samehata, clashing with Guy in a fierce exchange. But when it came to taijutsu, Kisame wasn't even close to Guy's level. After just a few moves, Guy spotted an opening. He suddenly kicked toward Kisame's head. Kisame didn't have time to bring his blade up to block and could only lean back to avoid it. But Guy followed up with a hook kick, snatching samehata away. Gotta admit, Guy's disarming move was smooth, worthy of being called a master of taijutsu. Natsuki added a reminder. Guy-sensei, samehata is bound to its wielder. Don't try to grip it, you'll get counterattacked. Just kick it away, or it'll crawl back to Kisame on its own. Without hesitation, Guy booted samehata far into the distance. You brat, you know too much. Suden, Dakedan no Jutsu. Water release, great shark bullet technique. Kisame was furious. He quickly formed hand seals and unleashed a massive wave, flooding the entire area, a testament to his immense chakra reserves. Naruto was dumbfounded. This was probably the first time he'd seen such a terrifying Suden jutsu. But Natsuki remained completely calm, holding the solar flare stance in front of Itachi, ready to blind him the moment he exposed an opening and then strike. Itachi seemed to have realized this, too, so he refrained from making any rash moves. He kept himself ready to close his eyes at any moment, and to activate Suzanu's protection as needed. After all, if Natsuki hit him with the 8 gates, his brittle bones would shatter instantly. You seem immune to my genjutsu. Itachi's eyes reflected a trace of disbelief. He had been trying various genjutsu on Natsuki the entire time, but none of them worked. It was baffling. Natsuki chuckled. Genjutsu? Just wear sunglasses, and you won't get caught. Isn't that common knowledge? What utter nonsense! If it were that easy to counter genjutsu, wouldn't every genjutsu user in the ninja world be a laughingstock? But Naruto took it seriously. Really? Is that how it works? No wonder you wore sunglasses during the Chunin exams. So it was to protect against genjutsu. Haha. I've learned something new, Date Bayo. Damn it. This kid's hopeless. Natsuki had no intention of actually fighting Itachi. Battling Itachi was exhausting. With Susanoo as a shield, even if you smashed it apart, you might not harm him at all. It was just too much effort for too little reward. Plus, Itachi's Amaterasu was seriously dangerous. If pushed too far, he might resort to it, which would be a pain to deal with. No, it was better to just stall, and wait for the tide to turn. As expected, a moment later, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared on the scene and launched a Katon, Dian Dan, fire release, great flame bullet, nearly roasting Kisame like a fish on a grill. Jiraiya had heard the commotion and arrived. Itachi immediately called out. Kisame, it seems we've failed today. Let's retreat. Kisame had no objections. He had been wary of Natsuki from the start. After all, the guy had nearly killed him last time. The scars were still fresh. And now this weird Kappa guy was just as much trouble. Add in one of the legendary Sunin, Jiraiya? Forget it. Capturing the Kaibi Jinkriki was out of the question today. Then let's. Not so fast. Nin, Gamakukiyos no Jutsu. Ninja art, toad mouth bind. Jiraiya slapped his palm on the ground, summoning the walls of a giant toad's stomach, trapping everyone inside. Natsuki, seeing this, dropped the standoff and drew his Maken Senjin, Demon Blade Thousand Edge. With a flash, he was in front of Itachi, slicing down. Itachi instinctively raised a kunao to block, but in the next second, his pupil shrank.
Thanks for listening.